What up, boys? We're back. This is the pre-Scourge BlastCast, and I'm here with Elesshar and Grimro. It is currently 5 a.m. for Grim, so yeah, what a champ. And it's about 8 p.m. for Ellie and I, so yeah. Today we just wanted to discuss the 3 teasers. Well, not exactly teasers, more like balance posts, manifesto, whatever you'd like to call it. They released so much information for us this league ahead in advance so that we could digest everything, see the changes, and potentially also give our feedback. So if you have feedback regarding all these issues, make sure that you know, raise your voice and concerns. And also if you're happy about these things too, make sure that they, you know, write a love letter to GG if that's what you please. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to be discussing that sort of stuff. And
yeah, I mean, it's more like 3 balanced bombshells, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, like last league was being marketed as the meta shakeup. This is the real meta shakeup.
It's way more of a meta shakeup than last league for sure.
Yeah, there's stuff that got buffed, there's stuff that got nerfed, and it's like all over the place. And there's definitely a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to right now. But we'll probably cover in order. So the first one to open up here is Ailments, and pretty much the removal of Ailments for the most part, because there's just so many options to gain ailment immunity, or, you know, contribute to some strategies which help you mitigate them now. So what do you guys reckon? Do you like the changes, or do you think they went too far?
I think they're great. Yeah, especially like Purity of Elements. I think it's so good, dude. It's actually insane. It might be too strong. They might have to nerf it. I don't know. Complete ailment immunity.
50%
it's
of
a
your
lot of
mana.
suffixes on gear having ailment immunity, like.
Yeah. But it also gives you res and enables Watcher's Eyes, and the Watcher's Eyes are amazing too. So like, I've used Purity of Elements in the past, and I think it's a good aura. It's 50% aura, so now it's more expensive, but opportunity cost at the end of the day, it's a fantastic aura. But so I think it's good.
I don't know, I guess like it's probably going to see a lot of use in hardcore, right? But the thing about Purity of Elements is, yeah, its value went up a lot. But they also buffed a number of other different ways that you can get ailment immunity. So while it got buffed, it also got nerfed in the same sense that there's like easier free ways to get that now as well. So one of the things which obviously most people pointed out is Brine King is completely ridiculous now.
Yeah.
It just gives you freeze immunity, just straight up. So that kind of like cuts 2/3 of the usefulness away from Purity of Elements. So you're only really taking it for Shock and Ignite, because for the most part, I can't see why anyone wouldn't take Brine King, because the other ones aren't as enticing as just straight up an ailment immune.
Yeah, but if you have ailment immunity, the other pantheons are also insane. So.
Yep.
You reckon?
Yeah, I mean, like Lunaris is still very, very good. Avoidance is, you know, especially now without dodge, like having avoidance is insane.
True.
Sorry, sort of jumped the gun there talking about dodge. We'll get to that later, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But overall, I guess what kind of effect do you think this will have on like the creation of builds and I guess the meta? Because a big part of 3.14 was everyone was having a meltdown about how they're going to get ailment immune, because, you know, obviously it was so important. Yeah. With the biggest one being freeze. But you know, now freeze is pretty much removed from the game after you get that pantheon and upgrade it. What do you think that's going to do to the kind of builds? Like, everyone was hyper focused on Raider and, you know, to a lesser extent Saboteur. So do you reckon it's still going to be the same?
I mean, part 1 of the manifesto kind of was more of a opens up the opportunity for other ascendancies that didn't provide these bonuses to, you know, ailment avoidance and avoidance in general to really shine. So in a way, there's a lot more, as people like to call it, viability of other ascendancies to come through and, you know, shine defensively and bring whatever to the table. But in a way, it also nerfs the ascendancies that did provide those bonuses. So, you know, it's like a give or take kind of thing. So, I mean, it's good overall, so there's nothing to complain about. I think all of the changes are good. Getting it back from Flasks is good. A lot of items getting the suffixes added, where you get like 60% here and 60% there for different things, and ailment avoidance being added to all shields. I mean, overall, it's just more options, and more options are always good. And I feel like ailments is one of those things that you want to like tick off on mostly every build, and they become deadly and deadlier. So yeah, I feel like just one of those things that you really want to tick off on most builds and then move on to the next thing. So it just opens up the viability for a lot of things to shine, I think.
I think we'll have a lot less pressure on the suffixes on gear and have more on the prefixes than we did last league. Because last league on prefixes, you only wanted like life and a few other mods. So it was pretty easy to craft like items starting from the suffixes and then just doing the prefixes after. For example, chests. You usually just start on the suffixes and then from the suffixes go up and do the prefixes in most cases. But now that you need like a lot of defense from armor and stuff, it might be hard to make them. Like getting like life and the armor on the same item is kind of hard, I think.
Yeah, that's something that comes into factor a little bit later in one of the other manifestos, though.
True.
But yeah, crafting suffixes for the actual armor, there's going to be less pressure on that, so you can obviously cash in on some other ones, whether they're offensive or defensive for your character, and also Ascendancy is much easier to deal with. You're not going to be penalized for not playing one of the ones that pick it up for free.
I mentioned it because of the like purity of elements and not needing them much ailment immunity on the suffixes. That's why I was mentioning it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
From the perspective
I think it's going to be interesting to see
though,
how it plays out, because obviously the biggest and most impactful one is the period of elements and the Pantheon stuff. But it should be pretty interesting overall.
I think if you look at it from softcore, it's just a Pantheon. People just take that. And then you're going to be like, I'm freezing me.
I was actually going to say, Most people are probably just going to ignore Shock at Ignite and maybe Bleed, but I mean, you do have to kind of address that. But overall, just take the freeze one and that's it. Good enough.
There's a minor Pantheon for Bleed. You don't take more damage if you're moving with Bleed.
Oh, that's pretty big, actually, yeah.
To be fair, I don't think you even need the immunity to freeze, because like now on Flask, it's pretty good. The one that you get on Flask, it's really good and you can get it early.
Other suffixes are good though on Flask as well.
Yeah, but on softcore you just need the bleed and freeze and you're done. Like we used to run with a lot of even shock and ignite sometimes on Flask. Now just having two, and also since they nerfed a lot of unique flasks, I think that just having two suffixes for ignite and in freeze is gonna be fine. Yeah, you can fit in your build definitely.
I suppose. Also, you got to consider that now we get like 17% attack speed as a suffix. Adrenaline is back. We get up to 60% increased armor during Flasks. Like like things like that. These suffixes have become insane now.
Actually, yeah, I didn't think about the armor.
All of these suffixes are just crazy, and I think you're gonna want to, like, it's gonna be almost a DPS upgrade to sort your affixes in other ways, and then get the Flask suffixes over like trying to fit more, because not all slots get damage, right? So in the slots that don't get damaged necessarily, it's going to be a DPS upgrade for you to like focus on maybe covering your avoidance, so then you can put that good stuff on the Flasks, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I guess kind of just building on Flasks, they did get a bit of a buff with a lot of them having like substantially increased duration overall, as well as more access to flask generation on the passive tree and gear like the belt slot. What do you guys think of that? So it seems like they went way overboard in nerfing them, and now they're bringing it back a little bit, and we're going to get a middle ground on some of these, because like even unique flasks took a buff, like Taste of Hate and stuff like that. They're going to have way higher duration now.
Yeah. What do you think, El?
I think that the duration is nice. There's a lot of interaction that you can do with high duration, like the belt that gives you soul thirst, I think. You can do some crazy stuff with the belt now, and having more uptime on flasks is nice. There's also a lot of nodes in the tree that give you like flask duration and flask reduced flask charges used. I think you can stack reduced flask charges used to like pretty much spam flasks indefinitely now. Like you can actually just spam them. I think it's really nice. The state overall the flasks will be now,
Yeah, it's going to feel a lot better mapping, even if you're not like a zoom build, slaying packs all the time, because the duration is just like so much higher. In most cases, it's like almost double, like on the Ruby Flask and stuff like that, which is completely insane. So it's going to definitely make that mapping feel way better, especially early on, which is good. So I mean, I guess that was Manifesto 1, primarily Flasks and Ailments. I think it's a pretty big manifesto, and it's pretty much overall completely buffs. I don't think there was anything that came out worse for wear. I think, obviously that was a good way to start. But did you guys have anything else to add on 1?
I mean, there's a lot that we can cover. I think it's nice to see that they're trying to, because they stood by the fact that they thought we were getting too many souls, so like flash charges. And so to circumvent sort of how bad it felt last league, instead of just giving us the charges back, they made flasks less like click intensive by giving us more duration and things like that on them, which I think is the right way to go about it. And there's more synergy as well with using things like enkindling orbs and instilling orbs. So I'm really looking forward to like really getting the most out of those currencies. And yeah, I just like the way that they sort of went about these designs, keeping in mind enkindling and instilling. So yeah, I think it's good design.
Just one question I have for you guys. So to give you guys a bit of context watching, me and Tuna were having a discussion about defenses in the ranger side of the tree, which will come up later on again. But you mentioned that there's really insane flask suffixes and prefixes now, specifically for damage, like the attack speed one. Does that add some kind of value to Pathfinder or Scion Pathfinder in the way that, building around flasks might be a little bit more viable other than just stacking all the unique ones?
There's always been a benefit to doing that with Pathfinder, but I think the problem with Pathfinder is that what it was really trying to juice in the past was unique flasks, because unique flasks relative to non-unique flasks, they give you a lot more like sort of damage, which is what Pathfinder is missing in my opinion. It's damage, whereas like the really good affixes that you're getting now are more defensive ones, right? You do have attack speed, sure, but for the most part it's all mostly defensive stuff. Like you're gonna want to run increased evasion, % increased evasion on a Jade, or % increased armor on a Granite, and so you're gonna get even more defense on a Pathfinder. But I feel like you might struggle a little bit with finding just the right balance between damage and defense in that regard. But at the same time, it's not that the ascendancy is not viable, because it's really strong, but it's a matter of really putting the time into PoB and figuring out a good balance between those two things.
Yeah, perhaps
I think that now the way that you will play Pathfinder is just you run the increased effect orb on pretty much all your flasks, because since you have like generation, even if you run out for like 1 or 2 seconds, and also you have like less cost, you just want to have like really juiced flasks.
It's not a multiplier though.
Okay, but let's say that you have a diamond flask with increased crit chance on the suffix, right? And then you put like 70% increased effect from the orb, and also your Pathfinder, and you take flask nodes, you will get so much crit that just the flask will like give you like probably like the whole tree worth of crit from just one flask. And on bosses, for example, even if you have like a little bit of downtime, it doesn't really matter. Like you have to kite anyway on bosses, and on maps, even if you I ran the orb that makes your flasks not charge while it's using this league. I ran it like a few days, and even while mapping, you don't really feel it, because you insta kill the packs and you just get it back, the flasks back really fast, even though you're not Pathfinder. So I think that like in combination with other unique flasks that still give you good damage, like Taste of 8, I think Pathfinder is going to be really strong.
You have to click your flasks though. I think there's like, I know people really like to look at PoB and see the numbers go up and whatnot, but I think part of what makes a good build is how comfortable it is to play, and having to worry about your flask uptime, and I think that makes the build worse personally. So if a build doesn't really work off not worrying about flask, I think part of the reason why people want to go Pathfinder is so that they never worry, like auto flasking or just like smashing your flasks. So having to then put it in kindling and worrying about when you're using your flasks and whether you have charges or not when you reach the boss, that's almost defeats the purpose for me.
I personally don't mind clicking the flasks, but I see, like, I played with automatic flasks as well, later in the league, I played with automatic flasks. Maybe early in the league when you need like actual more damage and you need to think about your build, and now you map, you might want to go for effect and then you swap into automatic later on when you have more damage. At least we have the option to use it if you want to.
Early is hard to go automatic anyways. It's like 4 instilling orbs, 4 scours, and 4 baubles, I think.
Yeah, it's really cheap because they added it to the bands. It's really nice.
But early, that's kind of like you can't get that, especially now, until like later on, because the flasks are locked to item levels too, the tiers of affixes that you want to roll on them.
True.
I think the Enkindling Orb reminds me of a keystone that we were looking at yesterday, Tuna, which is called Enduring Composure. Basically, what the keystone is it gives you 20 max res and 20% physical damage reduction while you have a guard skill up. So it's like Molten Shell, but it makes you take 20% more damage while it's down. And that just reminds me exactly of what the Enkindling Orb is, because you can't gain flask charges while it's up. So, you're going to have downtime. I don't know. I guess it's a trade-off. Depends on how strategic and intelligent you are with your flask play.
Yep. I mean, there's places where it could be used. Like, imagine if you're confident in your dodging abilities on like Uber or something. You're like, I'm not gonna get hit. So you could bring like only damage ores with damage flask with Enkindling, and maybe like a duplicate even, and just press it. And when the other one's recharging, then you press the other one, right? I guess there's place for that sort of stuff to come into play if you really want to. But again, like, quality of life over everything, in my opinion. You can sacrifice some quality of life on league start, as Elesshar said, when you actually are really strained for damage and things like that. Yeah, but I think later on, once things settle down and people start getting good items and currency, then quality of life over everything, I feel.
Yeah. I think that brings us pretty nicely to part 2 of the manifesto here, which is core character defenses and recovery. So this is the one which got a lot of people thinking, because there's a lot of buffs, and then there's also some potentially big nerfs on some archetypes in the game. So I think the best way to cover this is just by going type by type. So let's start with armor first, because I think this is going to be one of the more powerful defenses that we're going to be having access to pretty much in the future, with a lot of ascendancies for the most part.
Yeah, armor is insane. Crazy.
Yeah.
It's actually just crazy. It's something like, I don't know if you remember, but like a few years ago, if you said I'm building an armor character, you're a joke, right? You're actually just trolling. But now it's so good that I feel like you need armor on mostly any character. Like, if you're not building armor, it's like, what are you doing? You just get a granite determination, and like then you're already like having like 50% damage reduction to fizz, as long as you're not getting completely just overwhelmed or crushed, right? Like, so yeah, it's just insane. I think it's so good. It's something that you might want to actually look into building for almost any character at this point.
Armor has always been good, though. I remember in Breach League, we still have the same calculation for armor, right? And I was playing Arcor at the time, and I built a character with like 35k armor, and I was just face tanking Minotaur. Like, it has always been good, but there was so much opportunity cost to getting armor and so much damage loss that people didn't actually build it.
And now it's twice as
reducing
good.
And reducing the scaling, like increasing the scaling of armor, like the amount, you need way less amount now to mitigate the damage is going to be insane. You can make so many tanky characters.
Yeah, so it's twice as good now, according to the new formula. So if you had 20k armor, it's basically like you have 40k now, which is like crazy, of course. And one of the things that is particularly powerful is that there's a lot of modern day synergies with armor as well, which I feel like a lot of people, myself included, didn't realize just how good they are. Namely, Molten Shell. It's pretty crazy. So I think armor is certainly going to be one of the premium defenses moving forward. Especially because, obviously we've lost a few other options. I guess for the next league, out of most of your characters you've kind of got in your head, would you consider building armor on them, you guys?
Yep.
Yes, but probably not at the start, because it's kind of hard to get both armor and life on the same piece of gear if you want like high tier and also good suffixes. Because let's say you want to craft them with fossils, they cancel each other, for example, because pristine fossils remove defense mods and dense fossil remove life mods. And so there's not many ways to craft them. It's mostly just either spam a fossil and then craft one of the mods on the prefixes, or you have to like RNG with Harvest maybe, like Reforce Defense or Reforce Life that don't cancel each other. And also you need to get good suffixes as well, and that's going to be expensive.
You're overthinking. Because all you need is the bases. That's literally all you need. You just need to care about your bases, and you're already at like 15k armor. And then you get your flask.
Okay.
And then you got like 22k. You get determination. Holy dude! Now you're sitting at like 40k. It's insane.
Yeah. So
about determination, I don't think a lot of people will actually run it in softcore though.
I think
it depends.
It's pretty good.
I think we should spend a little bit of time talking about the softcore mentality, because most people are kind of like gravitating towards this 6 portals, 6 layers of defense kind of mantra, which is kind of a meme these days in softcore. I was very much of that mind as well, until I played a character which actually was well-rounded, and I realized that it's just the way to go. Sacrificing 20 or 30% of your damage, hell, even 40%. To make it so that you don't die pretty much ever, for the most part, using defenses is like a fair trade-off, in my opinion. Because in most cases, when you're mapping, unless you're doing like 100% delirium or you're doing exclusively bossing content, the actual bosses that you do, the conquerors, are like probably less than 5% of your total game time in a session. So why not just be immortal in maps instead?
Yep. And I feel like the opportunity cost of building into defense now with all the changes that they've made is a lot lower than what it used to be. Like, the thing about you can just use the item bases and you're already twice as tanky. That's just, it's not that hard. Like, caring about your bases is not hard at all.
Yeah.
Now that with the mana efficiency being a lot better for you to like reserve the auras, right? Like, you're gonna be able to reserve more as long as you're not stacking. So essentially what that's going to mean is that like you're not actually losing anything compared to last league, because you're able to reserve an extra thing on top. If you're greedy and you're like, well, instead of reserving determination, which is now technically something that you wouldn't have been able to get last league, you say, I just want another 50% damage aura, then that's on you, I suppose. But overall, the quality of life of how it's going to feel like to play the game overall, like from these nodes, it's just everything's better aside for potentially Raider. But I feel like even with Raider, we might have to sort of rethink how we build characters, rather than just be completely blinded by the fact that one layer of defense that we used to have is gone.
Yeah, I guess just touching a little bit more on the base. Oh, you go ahead, Elesshar.
I agree with your point that you said before, that well-rounded characters are better. I usually, after a few days, start playing well-rounded characters. At least they don't get one-shot in maps. But really early league, which is like the most important time of the league, at least for me, I like to just go glass cannon and just kill everything as fast as I can. Because it makes you invest less in your build, and you can still do the content so that you can scale, you can snowball faster into the next build. Like, I don't like investing too much in my first build.
I think that there's definitely multiple trails of thought, but I mean, I've played through quite a few of them. So I used to do the big mapping push, starting a mapper, and then I swapped over to the bossing push because it was just most lucrative. The glass cannon approach generally is the one where you try and do all the bosses in the game as fast as possible and sell the items that drop for a profit, because no one else can do them yet. That's seen a massive reduction in profitability lately, Elesshar. Are you still going to go for that strategy? Because it's nowhere near as good, at least from my experience, last two leagues, pretty much.
The strategy that you just go squishy and rush bosses?
Yeah, like
really
Cortex,
early?
Uber Elder, and stuff like that. It's just like the prices start tanking after like day one. And, it's much more enticing to go for kind of like mapping strategies where you're doing like breaches, legions, or something like that early, in my opinion, which, you don't have to smash your face against red maps on day one or something like that.
I still like to push the Atlas as fast as possible. This league, I wanted to try and play some either minor wonder or minor bow character, and see if I can make it work. If I can't, I'll just play something that everyone's playing like meta, like last league. Everyone was starting like Toxic Hero and Caustic Hero. I'll just see what people are playing. But before that, I'll just test like playing a minor if I can make it work. My benchmark for like a build to be okay to play is if I can do T16s on a tabula and like day one gear, I'm fine. I can just play it all day and just make enough currency so that I can make another build later.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just over the soul-destroying wall that you hit in T16s where you die 4 times a map with Castle Death Portal on. I don't want to sign up for it again.
It depends on the build. Like if you play a long-range build, you don't really die that often. You maybe die once a map.
Once a map? That's a lot.
I mean, I guess it's
But
one
still,
loading screen.
every
It's
map
like 10, 15 seconds.
Just 100 deaths in a day.
If you're doing like the Conqueror maps, like with Cirrus Dominated, no thank you.
You run with Custom Death Portal though.
Sweet, dude. let's do that.
I mean,
again. Nah.
You were playing
totally
like
know
the
what you're talking
Summoner, like really early when you just have a tabula, you don't have gear. I mean, like having like a melee character like Summoner that you have to like walk into packs, you're still
not melee,
squishy.
You use
It's
the
kind-
Arcanist brand.
Okay, you use Arcanist brand, but you were also testing me with Cyclone before. But yeah, it's really it's kind of close range. It's not like a bow character.
No, it's not. It's fine though. I know what you mean. Yeah, but totally.
And also you have to wait for the mobs to die. If you play like a long range skill, they just die before you even get in range for them to shoot.
I mean, regardless of what build you're playing, it's more about the tools that we're getting now, right? Who cares about last league?
100%.
So
I think it's definitely more incentivized to build defense than before, 100%.
definitely.
Yeah, I'll definitely build more than last league.
One thing is I'm afraid of is that I think to some extent people are not going to embrace the changes because of maybe not understanding how building defense works. Until like maybe Dan makes like an insane build and people are just like, whoa, and then everyone copies or whatever.
Well, we can start on evasion because I think that's basically the perfect discussion here for what we're talking about. So evasion is pretty much the choice for a lot of the builds that Elesshar is referencing here. Evasion and dodge, as they allow you to basically just avoid a percentage of basically deaths as you don't get hit by key mechanics, on whether that be boss fights or in maps. And the primary defense that you go for is dodge, which is, acrobatics and phaser acrobatics, which you can invest, 4 or 5 points in and get, sometimes like 40 to 50% damage mitigation or EHP. But those are now being removed completely. What do you think about that, Elesshar, in terms of like starting a trapper or a miner? Does that make it less viable to go full glass cannon?
Okay. This might be controversial, but I didn't used to take the full 5 nodes. I only took the 1 because it wasn't point efficient for me at least. I didn't actually used to take all 5, dude. I only took the 1. I would only take 5 if I was scaling more into dodge. If I'd like the boots, what are the Azir boots? And maybe if I was a class that had some spell dodge, I would invest into all of them. But usually on miner, I would just go as much damage as possible and just not care. But yeah, this league, I'll definitely invest more into defense because there's so much less opportunity cost. Because just from the base and the flask, you get so much evasion that you don't really need to invest too much. You just get like HP on the tree and just evasion on your base. The colors are fine because it's mostly green and blue, so an evasion base is nice. And flasks, you're not really starved on flasks anyway, on miner and trappers and stuff like that. So using like an evasion flask with percent evasion, you should be fine. Like you have a life flask, mana flask, diamond, quicksilver, and then evasion flask. You just go with those 5. You'll just drop phasing, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess if you weren't investing in defense anyway, I guess it doesn't really matter that they removed the easily accessible defense.
Yeah, I would get in on like later on, like if I play bow builds or other builds, but I wouldn't actually get him most of the times.
There's one thing that's gonna hurt is that if I look at PoE Ninja, like I think 70% of softcore, we're just going for the easiest. Like choose Raider, get phase aggro, get like blind. That's like you get those things which are pretty much free, and then your character's like almost never gonna die. But when it does get hit, then your max hit for like fizz is maybe like 6k at best. So you're gonna be like taking, deaths here and there. So now that they're taking that out, it's sort of pushing people out of their comfort zone, and it's gonna sort of force people to think a little bit more about what they're doing, especially as evasion-based characters, because building evasion on its own is not gonna be enough, because evasion, all it does is protect you against attacks. So spells are just gonna eat through you, and people are just like, oh, but if you want to do that, then take Iron Reflexes or something. So and then you're just gonna die to all elemental attacks, and sure, you can suppress spells, but like it's more like you're just gonna have to sort of probably layer your evasion with something, and now it's not enough to just carry you, right? Like you're gonna need some damage reduction of some sort, especially since you don't have access to Wind Dancer, you don't have access to Fortify. So I think people that don't invest into defenses are gonna be worse off than they've ever been in this league. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of complaining when league starts.
Yeah, so I guess one of the main complaints of a lot of players is that, the game kind of feels like bullshit. There's a lot of one-shot mechanics, and it's quite unfair. Now, that's not necessarily untrue, because a lot of those complaints come from hardcore players, but I think a lot of it does come from this kind of like notion that, that's the correct way to play, the Elesshar strategy, and the way that I also play.
To give a little bit of context, I usually go for... my league style is like kind of like this. I just push Atlas, and it's like divided in sections, okay? I just push the Atlas, and then I just farm money, and then I just make another build. So if I die the first 1 or 2 days, I don't care. Like, it just needs me to get there so that I can farm money, so that I can just respec into whatever I want to play. So I don't really care about League Star. As long as I have enough damage and I can do the content, I don't mind dying.
League Star is the most fun, though. I mean, for me, I would love to sort of take a different approach to League Starting, because you can still do that just with not a shit build.
True.
And I think builds that just die to everything, I think those are just shit builds. Because you could achieve the same goal. Yeah, it's going to take you twice as long to kill a boss, but who cares?
I mean, I think the problem is that you can do it that way, right? If you can kill a boss by going double damage, no defense, that's going to be, and you cannot get hit, that's going to be the best way to do it, because you farm it so much faster. So it's actually kind of the game's fault in that way that this playstyle is encouraged and allowed. But at the same time, people want to play that way. Why not, right?
Yeah, it's not a fault though. I think it's again opportunity cost. Like, I think it's the game is fine. It's fine that the game incentivizes you to be like doing that sort of stuff. But maybe they should introduce more mechanics that punishes that sort of gameplay to really not incentivize it. But at the same time, it's like, it's not the game's fault. It's the players in this situation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a lot more reasons not to do it now than there was before, because there's like such a smaller opportunity cost for going for the defense. I guess let's talk a little bit more about evasion though, because I think there's a lot of confusion around, is this actually a nerf? Is it a buff? Is it, who knows what's going on? So to kind of like rattle off the changes here. So dodge is gone completely as a mechanic. And we're getting a new form of spell mitigation for evasion-based characters I think it's called spell suppression. And the way that functions is that you have a percentage chance to halve the damage of a spell that hits you. So it's kind of like spell dodge, except it only mitigates half. But that can go all the way up to 100%. So you can get 100% chance to mitigate 50% spell damage. And then in addition to that, evasion's also getting the better formula that armor's getting. So basically you have a higher chance to evade for less evasion, and the bases are also getting upgraded similar to armor as well. So basically it's going to be way, way easier to get high amounts of evasion, but you've lost dodge, but you've also got spell suppression here. And the last thing is that they've also nerfed the hell out of blind. So you've got a lot to say about this, Tuna. I'll let you start off. Is it a nerf, is the question.
Is the maximum evasion 90% or 75% now?
95. It's always been 95.
Oh, 95.
95,
yeah.
okay.
But reaching that is like
Yeah, it's nearly impossible.
You need like 170k, 150k evasion or something. It's like, and before this, you need like even more than that. So, especially with the new blind, it's not that good. I mean, I think this is something that like, you know, like when I first saw it, I was obviously not happy because of how much I love Raider and my cheap defense and maxing damage. But
Yep.
obviously, it's something that I sort of have to force myself to look at how I build defense differently now because of it. I think if you're a pure evasion build and you're not going to do anything except just grab evasion, you're way worse off. I think just having evasion and spell suppression also is not sufficient enough of a defense to really like get on by in the game, because the times that you do get hit, the damage is going to be so spiky, especially from physical damage attacks, things like that. Things that are basically not spells, which you're suppressing 50% of the time. Yeah, you're just going to die basically in those situations. In terms of spell suppression, I think spell suppression is insane. It's amazing. Like, but it's gonna be one of those stats that you either have 100% of it or nothing. Like, you can still be in between. It's fine, but you want to go all in spell suppression and grab 50% reduction there. So that's pretty good. Losing Wind Dancer is what really hurts as well, because losing 20% damage reduction.
Can you just explain that real quick? What's the change?
Well, the change essentially makes it so it punishes you for not dodging. So if you build a character that's not dodge focused, and you don't dodge, so that's not evasion focused and you don't evade, then basically what's going to happen is you're going to take more damage. But the way that I see it currently, it's kind of flawed, because you don't need that extra evasion that it actually gives you if you're focusing hard on evasion, because of how diminishing returns work with evasion right now. Like, it's basically like hitting a brick wall at a certain point, where you'd rather just reliably take the same consistent amount of damage. And yeah, especially since like if you layer that defense with anything else, like maybe you want to play like a dodge block character or something. So if you block, it's still counted as a hit. So then you have 4 seconds where you take more damage if you don't evade, right? Like, so I just think Wind Dancer itself is gonna be not very great, but I think now the go is gonna be armor evasion. Armor evasion is gonna be really, really good. So if you're playing a ranger,
hybrid, yeah,
you're gonna want to go hybrid 100% of the time. I feel like it's stupid not to. So armor evasion, and if you get spell suppression on top of that, that's amazing. And if you can again get like maybe a little bit of block on top of that, then you're gonna be insane. And we also can't forget that most builds end up with elusive, and currently elusive is gonna give you 15% avoidance of all damage.
Elusive is nuts.
It scales with effect, so you can get maybe 100% effect of elusive, and that's gonna turn into 30%. And you know that avoidance is obviously variable, and you can keep it up with Withering Step, but still 30% is going to be a 15% average, 15% is going to be a 7.5 average, and so on. So I think there's still a lot of ways that you can build into defense on the right side of the tree. But if you compare it to like, you know, Duelist, or if you compare it to Marauder, compare it to even Witch, overall I think Raider and Deadeye are, you know, at a disadvantage in that regard. But one thing is for certain is that GG was trying to nerf Raider. I know, like, they were 100% trying to nerf it, and they achieved it in a way, I guess. But they also gave us back some, you know. So that's my opinion. Sorry, that was a ramble.
That's okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Elesshar?
Not really.
Okay, I have a few things. I think the primary thing that we need to look at for defenses is that there's 2 different archetypes of damage, which is attack and spell. And then there's 2 variants that can come in, which is elemental and physical. You know, chaos is a thing as well, but mainly elemental and physical, right? I think that the problem with Ranger is that it deals really well with spells. Obviously, 50% mitigation is crazy. And it does really well with elemental, because, you know, obviously just resistances cover that for the most part. But what it doesn't do well at all is attacks, which are physical, right? It's just going to die to that. And I think that that's pretty much the main problem, and the only problem with Ranger right now is that, it just doesn't have a way to deal with it, like, at all. Like, your max hit for Elemental might be 25k because your resistances, but your physical is going to be like 5k. And the only way that you have to deal with that is just don't get hit.
As Tuna said, you can go hybrid armor evasion.
Yeah, but like, what does that actually look like? So you're gonna have to be rolling around with an astral plate, basically, right?
No, there's armor evasion bases. They give you both armor and evasion, and you scale them, and they're pretty high rolls as well. And also, you can both run with the armor flask and evasion flask together, and also you can run with like molten shell that scales on armor and gives you like a flat amount of damage mitigated. I think it's gonna definitely be viable with hybrid, a lot of flask. You can get flask effect easy on tree, on the ranger side of the tree. I think you won't have too many problems with the physical attacks if you build hybrid.
I definitely agree with like the armor solution. I definitely think that is a good way to go about it. Yeah.
Also, you can build a shield as well. People are not using shields as much.
I mean, yeah, if you're playing Spectral Shield Throw or you're playing a Wand or something like that, yeah. But I guess if you're playing bows, which is like, kind of Ranger, that's kind of like the hallmark.
I think they need to give bows more good mods on quivers or something. Because, I mean, bows...
Yeah, something defensive.
I don't know, man. What is it like ever since ExileCon? They were just constantly just shat on bows. I remember watching ExileCon and Chris was like, and we're nerfing TS, and everyone was like, yeah. And since then, it's just every league, bows getting shit on, dude. Like, why?
Yeah. I mean,
why?
It's already one of the most squishy classes, which has one of the hardest times getting damage. So, like,
and now it has no damage as well.
It has no damage as well now. Yeah, it's like even your multiple mirror bow build sucks in reality. So there's just no reason to play it anymore unless they take a really, really hard look at it. Elemental or physical bows they just really suck.
Feels bad, man.
I mean, you have defensive options, but I don't think they're good enough. You have rear guard that gives you 24% block, 15 spell block, 450 armor, and some damage, but it's not much. You have Maloney's Nightfall that gives you blind, life, res. And you also have Soul Strike that gives you like energy shield if you want to go energy shield. But I don't think they're good enough. They're kind of outdated. They should add way better quivers at least for defenses.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with that is Elesshar, and you know it all too well.
You need plus one arrow.
You need damage. Yeah, otherwise you're just in the dumpster compared to other builds. There's league starters that do more damage than a mirror tier bow build sometimes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
One of my league starters, but yeah.
You know what I mean though, right?
Yeah. I do. I mean, I don't play bows for that reason. I used to play. People used to call me a Ranger Randy. Should have seen my PoE was all just Rangers. And then it stopped after Legion League. It was just, why am I doing this to myself anymore?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I think evasion's probably the one which is in the worst place if you build pure evasion. But as you guys said, building like hybrid evasion, it could work. Overall, though, I think the Ranger side of the tree did take a pretty reasonably sized nerf. Would you agree with that?
They added elemental equilibrium there. With stuff like Elemental Elite can use, it's pretty good.
I don't know. 25 exposure, and that overlaps with stuff like the Raider exposure.
Okay, I never played Elemental Hit because I didn't want to path to Ellie Overload early.
Ellie Equilibrium, you mean?
Ellie Equilibrium, sorry, yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah,
because like hard. early league, if you don't have the duel, you can't really path there. So I might be trying Elemental Hit if we have Ellie Equilibrium on the Ranger side of the tree.
Yeah, I mean, give it a go, see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I suppose Rangers...
Also, there's so much Flask stuff on the Ranger side of the tree. Flasks are insane.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how hard you can get the upturn up with the new Flask nodes. If you can kind of like get close to Pathfinder level without being a Pathfinder, maybe that's pretty good.
And they're also... for Flasks, also they're removing a lot of bad mods on belts. I think they said they're removing some mods on belt, and
I think they're just adding the good ones. Maybe actually.
Let me check the manifest.
I should reread that part.
I think it was easier to roll good mods on belt, and there's a lot of reduced flash charges used on belt, which makes the uptime. Like reduced flash charges used is like one of the best Flask mod if you want uptime. It's better than charges gained and stuff like that, because if you use less, you have more uses out of your Flask. So
yeah, I mean it's a challenge there.
Yeah.
Because attack-based builds generally are the ones that rely most heavily on unique flasks for their attack and for their damage. So, you know, like, yeah, there's all these sick defensive options, but, like, you can't really get to them because you're pigeonholed into using all these unique flasks. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely options there. You're right, Elesshar. You could go for flasks for your defenses instead. The next one here we want to talk about is Energy Shield. So, Energy Shield got probably, I would say, one of the biggest buffs. I think it's fair to say it's mechanically all different due to the fact that they've shuffled around a lot of the way it works. It now recharges far faster, and there's more access to recharge overall. So the recharge mechanic is basically that time where you don't get hit, and then it recharges to full, and then you'll like basically have insane regen for that period. What do you guys think of Energy Shield? I caught Tuna saying that he thinks that Energy Shield is going to be like the meta.
I think Energy Shield is going to be the meta as well, because like for a life, you need life, and also you need like evasion rolls and stuff, and you're really pressured on the prefixes, and you also maybe need some influence mods to make your build work. On Energy Shield, you're only stacking Energy Shield. It's like your main defense. It's everything in there. So it's way easier to scale and build it, especially
if you're passing
on items.
It's not really that simple. Like, yes, it's not the end all. Like, if I compared my 4K Life Raider to 17K in Stacker, I had more damage. Like, I literally could reduce the incoming damage more than he could, and then survive a bigger hit than him. Like, it doesn't matter how much of a flat number you have if you have 0 of anything else, which is so important, which is also why I kind of get like a little bit annoyed when people are like, but he has this much, yes, and then you plug him into PoE and he has 0 physical damage reduction, he has no Fortify, he has no Wind Dancer, nothing, and the maximum hit he can take is like basically just the number, which is his HP.
But for example, they added the Trickster nodes in the tree, so you can go hybrid, I think, really easily.
Ghost Dance.
And also, if you go something like Necro, you literally just get block capped in like 2 seconds. Yeah. Like, there's so many ways to mitigate damage. You're like you're adding multiple layers of defenses in your builds, but you can do the same in ES builds and have like a really high HP pool. So even if you be like 1 or 2 less defense layers, you still are pretty tanky because of your big HP pool.
Overall, yeah, because of the buffer, exactly. If you do build a layer on top of the buffer, which is however much ES you can get, like 15k, it's basically so long as you can make sure that you don't get one-shot as like a ES character, and you have that recharge that procs like every 0.3 seconds, which is what you can reduce it to, you can get to like ridiculous numbers where like your ES recharge is like 13k ES per second. And then we're gonna get back to how it was with the ES builds, like around synthesis, where if you weren't ES, you're trolling, basically.
I don't think it's gonna get quite to that level. I think Life is a pretty compelling option as well, especially with the max res nodes that they're planning on adding to Marauder and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Energy Shield, in my opinion, has a set amount of builds that can play it. Like, you can't play Bow as Energy Shield, right?
You used to,
which way back in the day. Pardon?
You used to.
Yeah, way back in the day, if you guys didn't know, before the massive Energy Shield apocalypse was one of the biggest resets in kind of Path of Exile's power. You used to play Energy Shield on every single character, and the only slot you needed to get 10k pretty much was Avar Regalia on your chess piece. But, you know, those days are obviously long gone. You still do need to invest in a number of Energy Shield pieces. When you mean everyone's going to play Energy Shield, you don't mean that, do you, Tuna? Like, even bird characters?
No. By everyone is obviously like an overstatement. It's just that ES is so compelling now, and it's so strong that we're just gonna see a lot more people playing it compared to
It says top.
No.
It's pretty much meaning top side of the tree, right? Like Shadow, Witch, and Templar.
Yeah, I don't know too much about like Shadow is really compelling now because of Elusive. So Elusive being as good as it is now, with it being just a percent avoidance, which is what Dodge used to be. I think especially if you stack a lot of Elusive effect with Badge, and you can get up to 300%, so that's like 60% avoidance that you can get of all damage. Assassin is very compelling again, but essentially what I'm really trying to say is, yeah, like Occultist, Trickster, if it gets a good rework, and potentially like you might even play like Necromancer or Elementalist, and can't forget obviously the Old Man on the left side there. A lot of ES builds are obviously good as the Old Man, so that's
I think
Templar.
my problem with Energy Shield.
I think that what we might see with Energy Shield is builds that are low life without shavs, using Petrified Blood and a Life Flask with the high Chaos Res. Basically, the only way that you die from the stacking Energy Shield and going low life is Chaos damage, right? But if you go with Petrified Blood, you don't get insta-killed from Chaos damage, and if you can buffer it with the Life Flask, and you gain all the bonuses from being low life, and maybe you can reserve another aura on the life as well, if you can get enough reservation. And
We're not
think
there yet, but low life sucks now, man. You know the changes that are there. The mana efficiency doesn't affect life anymore.
Yeah, but Petrified Blood is still the same. You get the bonus from being low life. You just reserve it on life, right? And you get
Petrified
the 50%
Blood is a
thing.
reservation, right? As well.
It's a reservation.
Yeah, but you just get 30% damage, more damage for free, and you have like a buffer of life on top of your ES.
I mean, I don't know the details, but from what I understand, most people use the shield, right? The reservation shield.
Okay, let's say you have like 3.5k or 4k life, right? You use Petrified Blood, so now and you're low life. When you have like, let's say 7-8k ES, right? When you get hit, all the damage but chaos goes on your ES. Only the chaos damage goes on your life, and it's over time. You don't get insta killed. And also you can mitigate with the Pantheon as well, and you just need a Life Flask to keep it up, to just heal yourself back up on the life.
How are you reserving the blood aura?
On Blood Magic, and it's just one. You don't reserve both.
Yeah, the thing is, Blood Magic's gonna make it like reserve like a lot more. So the only aura you're getting is the corrupted blood aura.
Petrified Blood, and you get a buffer of life that you get like a lot of damage on the life you can get, and you get the low life bonus of 30% more damage.
I guess that's fine.
Or just investing one socket in your gear and one Life Flask, and it's 30% more damage.
It's 70% reservation on life with Blood Magic.
Oh, it's 7%?
Like it's a lot. It's a big reservation. Because Blood Magic is 200% multiplier.
50%, but yeah, if it's 70%, maybe it's not worth it.
It's because of your RMR, and they made it different.
There is some items that keep the global RMR, they said.
Yeah, but now you're using items.
Yeah, now you're using items, never mind.
Small clusters, they still give global corruptions, I believe, on jewels. But
small clusters are good.
We're getting into like scuffed territory. Like, what is this? You know, what happens when you get like hit by a big chaos hit? Like, boom, you
have chaos res. You can get you don't have a lot of pressure on the suffixes on gear now because you have ailment immunity pretty easily. And
you could just go CI.
I guess.
Yeah.
But then you lose 30% more damage. It's basically an extra link in your gear.
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
Just course getting Elixir, I guess. At that point.
The Elixir is pretty good because it lasts so long now, right?
They nerfed the duration a little bit, I think. It's about the same.
If you're able to drop shavs, you can get a really good test with IES and really good suffixes as well. Influence suffixes are so nice on chest, man.
The issue with low life, if you use shavs, like you actually lose damage by going low life because the chest is way more than 30% more damage, like these days.
That's what I was trying to achieve, getting the good mods on the chest while being low life. That's what I brought up. But yeah, you can go CI, but I think that it might be viable.
That's my actual issue with Energy Shield, and maybe you guys can educate me a little bit here because ever since the introduction of influence modifiers, I just never wanted to go Energy Shield ever again because there's so many good modifiers on so many pieces which require prefixes, like curse on chest, all sorts of stuff like that on gloves. And like the boots, like you don't want to be using energy shield boots. You want to be using those the tailwind, elusive, and all sorts of stuff like that on the boots.
Yeah.
So building a compelling high EHP energy shield character without sacrificing all of your awesome quality of life and damage on your gear, how do you do that without, obviously mirroring every piece?
You don't need to have like 15k ES, right? So on your boots, you don't necessarily have to have like all ES prefixes. You could technically still go for movement speed, elusive, whatever, tailwind, crafted, just like percent crafted ES or something. That would be okay, so long as you focus on your helmet having a lot of ES and your chest having a lot of ES. And so long as you start poking from your suffixes and working from your suffixes, right? So then you can just defense, reforge until you got something big. We're talking about expensive stuff, but essentially the build that I think what you're talking about is expensive as well, right? So yeah, you just focus on getting decent gloves, high ES chest. Maybe it's just all about the bases essentially, and you can really focus on just your chest, your helmet, and then getting layers to cover the rest, right?
Maybe we shouldn't build like full ES and actually go hybrid ES with something else, so we get higher EHP even though we have a lower pool.
I think Trickster is gonna be insane if they rework it, like if they make it not terrible, because right now it's terrible. Like Trickster, like it's so bad.
I mean, comparing life to energy shield really quickly here. So the perks of life is that you use about 1 or 2 rolls maximum, right, on your prefixes. So you have like the others open up, but you also get your implicit towards your defense. And we were saying earlier, you only really need the implicit to get defensive on your character, like, your armor implicit or whatever. Do you think that the same thing is true for energy shield? So the defenses will basically be covered by 1 or 2 prefixes and your implicit. That's it. 10k energy shield, baby.
No,
is that how it's
different?
Gonna be?
Because like with what you just described, is ES is life, and on these life builds, you still need life everywhere. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how many layers you have. If you have 2k life, like sure, you're gonna be tankier than if you didn't have the layers, but you have to have life. So and it's much easier to get a higher ES roll than it is to get a higher life roll, because of there being like 3 rolls that you can,
I guess what I'm getting at is like, where's the comparison? Like, is that so you'd rather use 2 to 3 rolls on your gear for energy shield rather than invest a bunch of points on the tree and get 150% life? Is that what you're saying?
At the expense of being completely chaos immune and having a much bigger life pool and having enough damage to still do everything I want to do? Yeah. Because who cares if you have 90 mil DPS Berserker that gets one-tapped? Like, people, like, they look at Pure Ninja, do you see your name up there? They forget about you tomorrow, bro. Like, who cares? Good on you. You fucking equipped 36 Watcher's Eyes.
Yeah. I guess the other thing is, obviously, like, Energy Shield's looking pretty compelling, but what kind of builds can even use Energy Shield? Because as we were kind of talking about, it's like Witch, Shadow, and Templar. Primarily, like, you're not going to go Energy Shield on a Marauder or a Ranger, or certainly not a Duelist.
Actually, on a Duelist, you can. There's a lot of shields that scale.
Okay. We're not. Come on. Overall, we're not going to be using Energy Shield on Duelist. You're not going to be getting your Cyclone Slayer and strapping on a Varagalia, are you, Elesshar?
No, you don't go with a Varagalia, but you can scale like Energy Shield on block, or you can use the shield, the Aegis one that Tuna was using in Ultimatum, that recovers your ES whenever you block based on armor, and you go hybrid armor and Energy Shield, and whenever you block, you're just invulnerable as long as you block, pretty much.
But for the most part, when you're rolling your
won't go, but there's niche cases that you can actually build it and be really efficient.
You can play Awa. That's the best way I can see.
Also, Awa, true.
But that's the only fringe case that nobody actually plays that. So, I mean, at least there is a few people. I was like looking at Pure Ninja. I was like, yo, is Hawa still? And yeah, there's some people, but the damage is low and it's not quite as compelling as it used to be.
Yeah. Overall, I guess the discussion I was trying to have here is I had this discussion with you on stream, Tuna, but I'd like to like hear what you think about it now. Is like, let's say energy shield is the predominant like defense, which is most powerful and easiest to build for, and everyone's crafting energy shield gear. What builds actually can use energy shield? It's spellcasters, and I think you said that there's two main ones, right? Well, three. There's the Chaos Dots, there's Winter Orb, and there's Eye of Winter. Those are like the main like predominant ones.
Cold Dots as well.
Or Cold Dots as well. Those are the meta ones. That's not a whole lot to choose from compared to, pretty much every other skill in the game, which can use life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not going to be such a divide because of how compelling the defenses are for life-based builds now as well.
I think there's a lot of options. People are just not playing it. Because remember when Tuna was playing the tanky Delver Trickster with like life gain on it from Energy Shield? That was a really good build. People are just not playing it because it's lower than just going zoom life with just all damage on the tree.
Like people if you remember build that, by the way. That was a long time ago. People don't remember that.
Okay, so basically you had a really tanky Trickster character with like 1.5k Delve, but it's pretty slow, and now the meta shifted to just time is money, so you just want to go fast, and people are just not building ES anymore because you have so much quality of life by going HP. For example, the boots that Grimro was talking about before. And yeah, I just think people are not building Energy Shield because there's like a little bit lower than life.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I think people are going to start to come around. Like, give them a few more leagues. I think people will start to come around and they'll realize that 6 portals ain't as good as people say. It doesn't feel fun. When you get into the thick of the league, it's way more fun to just blast maps without dying and level up and maybe even get level 100, which is kind of fun as well. I have another tangent to go off there, but we got more stuff to cover here. So this one's I'm gonna open this up to you first, Elesshar. They're introducing a new role, almost like a pseudo quality role, to items that spawn in the game. So it's primarily armor and defenses in general. But let's say you have your Val Regalia. When it drops now, it can have a bonus of anywhere between 0 to 20% increased energy shield on it, just implicitly, not modifiable at all, just to the base. What do you think about that from a crafting perspective?
I think it sucks because people are just gonna go for the perfect one and just overpay to make the better item. I think it's just terrible for the economy. I don't know.
Fair enough.
If you were to craft your item, would you just, let's say you can get a chest with like 400 ES base, or how much do you get on a chest? Like 250 ES or whatever. Let's say you get a one with 200, a one with 240 is 20%, right? You would always craft on the, just random number, but yeah, you would always craft on the higher ES one. You would never craft on the lower one, or something close to perfect. And I think that is just wrong in this game where you invest so much on your base and on your item. The crafting process is so tedious that having multiple bases and just adding one RNG layer is just terrible, I think.
Yeah.
If they don't make the crafting process easier, I think it's not good for the game.
It basically invalidates 95% of the pieces of armor on the ground, right? It's going to be automatically filtered out unless it's like a 6 socket or a 6 link, which you can either vendor or maybe use. What do you think about it, Tuna?
I mean, it's almost like because we play Trade League and this is not a single player game. 20% is going to become the new standard, and anything below is just trash.
Yeah.
But I hate to say that, but that's exactly how it's going to work. It's not that you're like, it doesn't, I know you're giving us an extra, by you, I mean GG. I mean, I know GG is giving us an extra 20% on top, so we should be happy. It's like, yo, you're giving us 20% POG. But what it's going to feel like is when you drop a 5%, you're going to feel like they're giving me 15% less rather than 5% more. And that's just player mentality, and you can't change that. And introducing this, which is a modifier you can't edit, is going to feel like shit.
if they added a currency that makes you change the implicit, and maybe maybe even if it's expensive, for example, a perfect fossil, or something. Your perfect fossil might be a good idea for instead of giving quality.
Yeah.
Maybe changing implicit.
I'd be okay
a
with
way
that.
to change it would be good.
Like a currency.
This was intentional. It was intentional. Otherwise, they would have just made the actual base a range, which you could modify with Blessed Orbs.
But that's boring. Blessed Orbs is I would be okay with a currency that's more expensive than Blessed Orbs, right?
Yeah, just for that specific reason.
Yeah.
It's just for that niche case.
I think.
But also
the
Can I add one thing to that? You know how Chris really wants good items to drop on the ground, and to be excited. And it's what if this good item drops and now it's got 20% less yes?
Well, it's a bad item now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a good item.
So they're adding more variance and things on the ground potentially being shit. Because it's not about it being, again, as I said, 5% better. It's about it being 15% less.
I think it's important to realize as well, though, that this didn't come for free. So there's three things that they're doing to bases. They're overall rebalancing them. The numbers will actually just change straight up. So you probably will end up getting more armor or an astral plate or whatever. The other thing they're doing is obviously introducing this new variable role on items that drop. But the final thing they did was that they're actually removing the ability to craft quality on these items as well. And this is particularly important for energy shield bases because those are the people who actually use that role. People who roll with armor and evasion generally never use that other than 6 linking items temporarily. And for that reason, the energy shield one is anywhere between 0 to 20 instead of 0 to 10, which is what armor and evasion is. Now, I think the actual gameplay of this is going to be that you're going to filter out anything below probably 18%, I would say, for energy shield, and anything below 9% for armor and evasion. Now, this is probably fine. It's actually going to increase the value and the staying power of bases, crafting bases in the end game, and you're probably going to keep them on your filter for longer, and they'll probably be worth more. A 20% 86 Val Regalia, it's probably going to sell for 10 or 20C, I would say, to crafters. Now, what's actually really has a big issue with her is influence bases. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, Tuna. So one of the more profitable things you can do right now is farming, Shaper, Elden, all sorts of stuff like that, bases. And they sell for a large amount. However, that is no longer really the best way to acquire a perfect Shaper base. Because what if your Shaper base drops and it's 1%? These things aren't common either. So it pushes you towards alternative methods, namely harvest, of getting bases. So the main way to get a base now will be to take a 20% regalia that someone sold you for 20C and put it in the harvest lottery machine to try and get a 20% cheaper elder base, or just slamming them with the influence orbs.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that dynamic? How's it going to affect the economy? And what's your game plan for it if this goes through?
I'm not happy. But yeah, go on.
I think that the range of the range in the implicit is gonna have an effect that crafters, if they find a cheap craft to do, they can maybe abuse it by buying all the lower bases. For example, remember when I taught you how to do the scrapyard the first time? Basically, I'll explain what it was. We were buying for example 6 link chests that have hybrid evasion and yes, and we're just spamming dance fossils on it until we get really high yes and evasion, and we would get even not the best in slot level or base at all. We would just go for the cheap ones for 15 chaos instead of the best chest with 1 or 2x. We'll go for 10-15 chaos for just a 6 link with level 72 because it rolls tier 2 evasion flat and yes flat, and we just spam dance fossils for a cheap because it kept cost at a minimum, and it will still give pretty good chests as an outcome, sellable chests that were a few x each, and if you go lucky you would make multiple x, 5 or more. And I think that now people will maybe abuse this, if a crafter is really good, he would just buy out all the cheap bases and just craft usable items for cheap. Maybe it might be good to have because maybe good bases are cheap now, even though they're a little bit worse. You just normal people that just do harvest, bring them with them in their stash, and they just craft them. There's a few uses. It might be good for the economy, but it also might be bad because the top end ones, if you want to craft a really good item in the late game, you're pretty much forced into the best tier. So there's not gonna be like really late game items on the market as much, but like the lower end, there's gonna be more because people just craft in bulk.
Yeah, I imagine a perfect 6-link shaped Varagalia. That's
yeah. If you go for the perfect one, it's gonna be way harder to find one or just to make one. And if you go for like mid to low tier, there's gonna be like a flood in the market because crafters just craft in bulk really fast.
There's even more incentive now to split bases.
Yeah, that's nice.
I don't know.
I
if
like
that's
the splitting the bases.
Anyways,
what do you think of the change to the influence farming though, both of you guys, because you've done it actually more than me, and this is also going to affect bases like ritual bases, right? You finally get your 86 Blizzard Crown 1%, and now it's more important than ever that it's not 1%.
Yeah,
that sucks.
It does. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. I'll be honest.
The thing about influence,
it's hard to.
The thing about influence. Sorry if I interrupted.
No, it's okay. Go for it.
The thing about influence is that you can force it with orbs, and also you can reroll it with harvest if you need like Shaper or Elder. So what people might end up doing is just buying the base with the perfect roll without influence. Maybe you split it so you have 2, and then you just force the influence on top with the orb. And if you need like a really specific influence like Shaper, you go in harvest and just reroll influence until you hit the Shaper or Elder, and then you just start the crafting. And it's pretty tedious, I think, if you want the exact like perfect one.
In a world where Harvest doesn't exist with that role, and in a world where Conquerors aren't part of the core game, like, is this mechanic even good?
No, this is what I like the least about this, is that it's because I hate that so many issues go back to Harvest existing in this game. But like the fact that like you don't farm Shaper or Elder to get the shaped items, right? Because you could just swap the influence. It's so bad. And so this change is gonna make this even worse, because you're not gonna be like farming Shaper or Elder maps or whatever and getting a 20% shaped titanium shield, because it's not gonna be 20%, because what's gonna happen is someone's gonna buy a 20% base, 86, slam it with an orb, and then swap with Harvest. Like, it sucks, man. So like for farmers, for people that want to farm these things up and grind the game, create value out of their playtime, this sucks. Like, no matter how you look at it, this sucks. But for people that choose to interact with Harvest, Discords, and fucking the trade website all day, this is good. And like, why? Why is this a thing? Why are you fucking giving these people more power, dude? Like, it's so bad. Like, it's okay. Let's rant over.
Instead of making the shoes, you order them on Amazon.
Pretty much.
They're giving more power to Amazon, man.
I think they had the right idea with the change. Obviously, they wanted to add some excitement and some value to the drops on the ground. You know, like 1 in 20 is super, but they actually achieved their opposite. They just pushed people towards these niche crafting systems even more to get the best items.
It'd be okay if Harvest wasn't there.
I think a problem is that this system might turn off people that want to get into crafting from crafting their endgame gear, because they're like, well, I don't have the perfect base, or there's like limited supply of the perfect base. If I don't know exactly how to make the item and I just want to experiment or like try new things and stuff, unless you make it like perfect, you have like so much opportunity cost to start with. The base is gonna be expensive, and then I don't know. I think it's just bad.
Okay, let's take a step back. So we're talking about perfect items here. So let's talk about not perfect items, right? Let's say you're just rolling Stygian Vice or something like that. I don't know. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean. Just roll, like, you're just playing through the game on League Start. This isn't really going to change much, right? You're not going to be like, shit, my 6-link, whatever unique, it's 16%. God damn it. That's not going to be a big deal. So honestly, I think that this only really messes up the tryhards at the end of the game. But the question is, does it add anything for the people who are actually playing through normally?
Yes. Let me
It
just be
does?
honest. It does, because this is actually just a bonus that they didn't have before. But when that mentality resets, then no. But that mentality is gonna reset real fast. Yeah, it's gonna take like a week for people to then realize that 20% is the new standard. But technically, yes.
Yeah, it's free
this
stats,
is
right?
bonus, yeah. But that's not how player mentality works, unfortunately.
I
And
just
think
want to
about
see
this.
how it plays out.
Uniques, man. You're gonna farm your unique up. You're gonna get that Shavs and it's gonna drop with a 2% roll. Guess what? Fuck you. Like, you're
The
screwed.
thing is, though, it's not 2%, right? It's normal, right? It's normal. It's a normal Shavs. It's the original Shavs.
Yeah.
But there's now a 20% higher version of Shavs. It's like, it's actually like they added chase items, but that immediately became a standard, right?
It's gonna become a standard. It's just player mentality. It's gonna become a standard.
Yeah,
Okay.
like.
Sorry, you go.
No. I just
Sorry.
don't know what to say. No, you go ahead.
Okay, so let's make this example. Right now, a Varagalia base energy shield is 163, okay? And the base energy shield of a Widow Silk Robe is the second best one, right? It's 150. The difference is 13 ES. How many people have ever crafted on a Widow Silk Robe?
No one.
No one. And the difference between a Widow Silk Robe and a Varagalia is more than 20%. Is less than 20%.
That's
It's like
true.
10.
That's a good
It's 10.
example.
It's actually 10%. You're gonna have the difference doubled. But you could have a Widow Silk Robe that is better than a Varagalia now.
We don't know though. We don't know how that's gonna work. We don't know if it's like quality in the fact that it just increases the base, or if it's like actually just juicing the actual base values, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess we have to see how it pans out. Obviously, there's been a lot of criticism of this. Pretty much no one I've talked to or heard about has liked it. So I think there's a high chance that it doesn't make it in. We'll have to see how it pans out though.
I think if they truly believe it's good, if they truly believe it's good and they have a grand plan for it, like,
yeah,
you know,
I think you're right. Yeah,
I think it's important for them to also stick to their guns, but for us to provide feedback, and I think our feedback is pretty obvious, right? Like,
yeah, I think just finishing up on defenses here. One thing that pretty much no one's talking about and no one's mentioned, and honestly I haven't really thought about, is they actually did buff recovery pretty much across the board. Everyone's getting more recovery, with the exception of Energy Shield Leech, which got gutted pretty much. What do you guys think of that? Like, you're going to be getting more Leech, more life dead on hit, all sorts of stuff like that.
good stuff.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's not really much to talk about.
Especially the regen, they added regen on Shadow and Ranger, I think. Like classes that didn't have any. And I usually, when I'm loot maps and stuff, I usually just go with Enduring Cry, because there's always degens on the ground and stuff that is annoying. So having some passive regen that you can get on tree or somewhere else, I think is nice. Having passive regen is always good.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Okay. Well, does anyone have anything else to talk about with defense? I guess there's Fortify. I personally am not a big melee character player. I did use it a few times on summoners with AG and stuff like that, but I think you're probably the person to talk to here, Tuna, because you used it on your last build.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously like two sides to this. There's one thing that I've been noticing with these manifestos is that GGG wants to rely less on us having like conditional uptimes on things, I think, and part of Fortify is like it being a conditional uptime on people that want to shield charge. I know they didn't do it because of that, but this is the bonus that I see to it, is that like keeping up your Fortify is a little bit annoying. But taking that annoyance away, I'm happy with, but obviously losing the 20% damage reduction sucks. Although you do have other ways to gain, like you gain more than 20% through the like basically doubling of your base defenses. So I think it's fine, but we're still yet to see how Fortify works, right? We don't know.
I think all
exactly
that said is that it's only going to work with true melee, and that it's going to be based on how much melee damage you do.
And champion.
And champ. But then what about Kingmaker?
I'm pretty sure that's
Fortify. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. So now
But we
someone
don't
has
know,
had Fortify
right?
too.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how it depends out. All right, Manifesto 3, the big one. This one's probably the one which is going to affect the end game players, who, which I guess is us the most. I guess let's start off with auras and other reservation effects. So for the most part, aura stacker and aura bots have been taken down a considerable amount. Curse bots as well. So the support playstyle and the stacker playstyle is going to be significantly weaker. With aura stackers, maybe they're even not actually viable anymore. I'm not sure. Let's quickly just rattle off the changes here. Medium clusters for curse and auras are now gone. They're only small clusters. So you go from getting 2 notables to 1 notable. And the aura effect on those is now aura efficiency, which is a new mechanic, which I'll talk about in a second here. And you can no longer get aura effect off of the notables either. So you can't, use all of the commander nodes and just get tons of aura effect. It's not happening. Similar with curse, I'm pretty sure it doesn't have curse effect on it anymore. I'm not sure. I actually didn't read the specific with curses, but you go from getting 2 notables to 1, which is actually a pretty big change to a lot of builds because you can't get stuff like Intimidate and Cull as easy anymore and as free anymore. So those are the pretty big ones. And the other massive change is that reduced mana reserved is no longer a thing. It's called mana efficiency, and this no longer scales exponentially. So you can't get 100% mana reservation anymore and just have infinite auras. It actually scales negatively. So the more you get, the worse it becomes, which basically means you can't run all the auras that you want anymore. It's not happening, meaning you're going to have to pick and choose which auras you want instead of running everything. So those are the predominant changes. Of course, there's some nuance to this. Other characters get to run more auras and stuff like that, but we'll get into that. What do you guys think of pretty much the gutting of end game aura characters?
I think it's great. They were way too strong. And for example, last league, I played with Jesse with a 10 Exalt Aura bot and like a 15-20x carry. You could just do the entire content of the game and just insta-kill it. Like you could go in feared and kill it in 1 second before they even spawn. I don't think it's balanced. Like they definitely needed a nerf. And I like the fact that they are making people be able to run more auras, so that like more self-sufficient and they have like more options. It's definitely good for the health of the game, I think.
I'm really happy about that change also, yeah.
There are still like a lot of different ways that you can build the support, I think. You can still like run one or two auras while using Spider. Like the Spider boots and the Spider chest are really, really strong. I used to use them as a support in the Synthesis race back in the days. And also you can do stuff like Necro or Elementalist and be like a shock support as well. Because they have like an implicit shock to their ascendancy. Necro from corpses, and Elementalist has like a base minimum shock effect that you can apply. And you can use like a skill with a lot of coverage and just shock everything, so your carry does more damage. And Spider gives increased damage taken. With the chest and the boots, it scales really, really well. You can also maybe use curses on a support, and also you can use Kingmaker and the helmet that gives you damage based on your attributes. There's so many ways that you can like still buff your party without being like super overpowered.
Yeah. I think so long as like, because you're still getting 50% 50% quant for every person that's in your party, and Aurabots are still going to be very strong. I think people think they're completely dead. They're not. But basically, like, so long as, let's say you still want to play with your friend, that's fine. So long as your character is not a nuisance, it's still worth having you around. Do you know what I mean, right? Like, so long as you're not making it harder, it's worth having that person around. And regardless of how we look at it, it's always going to be worth it having that person around. It's just going to take a little bit different the way you build your characters, right? But it's about playing with friends at the end of the day, which I think they want to make it less about like, I don't give a shit about you. I'm only playing with you because we get to play with like 15x and destroy the game. It's more about like opportunity cost of choosing to play with someone at the cost of potentially there being more, downsides. Yeah.
I already know what Grim is gonna say.
Playing together is not well. I mean, let's establish this from a progression point of view. Completing the Atlas, completing maps faster, killing bosses faster, killing content faster. Playing in groups is still going to be superior. Absolutely, you completely nailed it, Tuna. You're always going to want someone else there. It's better. But from a profitability point of view, if you look at it from that sweaty perspective, there's a massive, massive opportunity cost for including another player in your party and having them support you. Lead mechanics don't scale 1-to-1. They don't even scale like 50% with the quantity bonus. So you're pretty much heavily relying on the speed and the efficiency that you can clear a map with a 2-man party or even whatever. That only changes when you start to invest a massive amount of materials in a map and you start gaining value on the actual cost of the materials itself. And if you invest in Exalt and you're going to get 2 Exalts back and you multiply that by 50%, now it's 3, that's where you start to get value, which is what Empyrean Gaming's group does very, very well.
Yeah.
I think from a profitability point of view, it took a massive hit. Would you guys agree with that?
Maybe at the start, but honestly, it's something that I can't really predict exactly how it's gonna happen. But what I don't see happening is you're still there, like struggling through the Atlas. You day 1, your yellow maps or whatever, and then you got Joe and Bob over there doing feared already T16 on their 2x characters with all the auras reserved. And then by the time you get there, it's just not worth even existing anymore in trade because you can't provide any value because these guys have already completely flooded the market.
I actually think it's still going to happen, just so you know.
Yeah, I think so too.
I've talked to some aura bots and they said to me, is that it? Like, it's like they think it's like a joke.
You just drop defensive auras.
Well, not even. You don't even have to do that. Let's talk about there's two different group play players who use aura bots. There is the duos, which is basically like a carry and an aura bot, which is most of the group play that happens in PoE. And then there's the big sweaty teams who use like 6 players and a trader. Those 6-player teams actually, comparatively to those 2-man teams, actually got more powerful because they don't care about this change at all. They lost some aura effect. Yeah. That's it. They still get to run every aura and curse in the game because they have so many players. So they didn't really lose anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it mainly hits those 2-man parties, which in my opinion is like, not where the real problem lies. The people flooding the economy and destroying everything, allegedly, are actually those 6-man groups who run with the 5 delirium orbs and all sorts of stuff like that. But it didn't really affect them at all, right?
I don't agree. I think like the first few days, the big groups need to ramp up. Like it's gonna take them like 2 or 3 days to get to the point where they just face roll all the content. And normal mappers, like a normal build, can still do a lot of profit on like Nemesis maps and stuff like that. You can generate a lot of currency just by being on your own. And also, I think the 2-man groups were like the people that were pushing bosses super early were the ones that were hitting the economies the most.
Yeah.
Because normal players get to the bosses and then they don't have any buying power because when they do their content, the stuff they drop is like worthless. And the currency that you drop in maps always has an inherent value that doesn't get reduced by like the people's 6-man grouping and doing thousands of it. Because eventually it just gets converted into mirrors. It goes all back to the economy and they just stack mirrors and they just have mirrors in their bank.
Actually,
it doesn't. I don't think it changes the economy too much. It just makes the mirror go from random people to the stash of the people that go on 6-man party, and there's going to be more currency in the market.
So talking specifically about the 2-man bossing endgame stuff, let's just go back in time for a little bit. So that happened, whether people like it or not, pre-Delirium, which is when aura bots really went crazy. People still stacked all the auras and did all the bosses really, really fast and just one-shot everything. Source, I did it in Legion. That's how I did the 5 ways on week 1, really, really early. I played with a aura bot which specifically stacked aura effect for Wrath.
I remember it.
That's all I did.
I remember the exact build with Perquil Stow and Wrath, and you had the bow build. I copied the build.
it's and that I mean it didn't really get nerfed at all because clusters didn't exist then, and you only really used a few auras.
You're still
it's
stronger
still gonna
now,
happen,
by the way.
Yeah, it's actually stronger now. You're right.
Yeah.
It's still gonna happen, no doubt. So, who did this change really affect? I guess it just took the general power level down of aura bots, right? It didn't really change anything.
It's gonna make it more of a pain in the ass for them to get going. Basically.
True.
Which is already is big. Yeah, it's huge. Because League Start is when the economy is fresh, things are not saturated, where, you know, like you can create value and you feel like you're creating value in the economy. And it's the same reason why most people don't play Standard is because it's like you don't feel like you're actually contributing to the economy. And I think League Start is why it's so fun, is because it feels like everything you drop is valuable. Because of that, like lack of saturation, right? The demand for everything being so high. So that sort of the curve taking longer, I think is huge. It's so big. It's already a really, really good change, and I think it's okay to kill aura stackers. If I'm honest with you, I think it's fine. But they should have left the legacy for people that play in Standard, like for maybe people that don't have too much time to play. But essentially, if you're playing League, you're signing up to a progressive video game that changes constantly, right? Like I used to love playing Assassin on every build, and now Assassin kind of sucks, and I'm playing something else. And if you don't like that, go play Standard with some legacy gear or something. But unfortunately, also your legacy aura stacker's dead, by the way. So yeah, but yeah, I don't think legacy Standard aura stackers should have died for this. But at the same time, overall, every change here is good. There's nothing that's bad about this whatsoever. Individual players get more power, groups get less power. What's not to like? Like, come on. Even groups will realize, anyone that's played with an aura bot can attest to this, that it was broken, it was OP. It was like I've played aura bot in the past, I've played with aura bots in the past. We were asking ourselves the entire time we were doing it, like, how is this a thing? Like, how is this? I strictly remember when clusters were released, and I was doing delving in duo with Jesse, and then Jesse being on Discord like, we gained 900% more damage. I was like, wait, what? It's like, we do 3 billion now. I was like, what the fuck, dude? What is this?
I think it's important to clarify that aura bots were in the state of, wow, why is this allowed, before Delirium and the cluster jewels were allowed. And yeah, people have just gotten used to the 3 billion. It's like
I think Tuna said it well. They smooth the curve is like harder, like the power curve of Aurabot is worse.
Yeah.
But they still start like at the same way. Like level 30 or 35 or whatever, you can still go on a 4-link with Smite, Generosity, and Wrath and another aura, and still like carry through like even maps on a 4-link. You should have enough damage, like just from just two auras and Smite to like do most of the content, and then you just from there you just upgrade over time. But it's not like a crazy level that it was before, that once you get like your 2 or 3 items, you just facial the whole game.
Yeah.
I spoke to some of the Aura Stacker players because I like to check in with the people who actually like, go hard on this stuff. They pretty much, they said they're going to give it a go, but it's pretty much dead, right?
They're going to still give it a go? Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad, but
just stack something else. They love stacking, right?
You could do like Herald Stacker or something like that, but I think overall it's actually a bad change. I think Aura Stacker is was one of the coolest builds that PoE had. Like, do you like that they removed that? Like, I understand that it's kind of ridiculous, and I know Tuna thinks it's a bad build, but the whole standing in Cirrus Storms, spamming all out on little sparks, and Fear dies, bam, and spending 7 mirrors and on your build. Like, I don't think that's something we actually necessarily wanted to lose.
There's always going to be something else.
What do you consider an aura stacker? Like 6 link damage on your chest and then everything else auras? Every other socket?
The voices, because 11 or 12 mediums, that stuff.
There's still ways to get like something okay or maybe usable with March of the Legion and stacking duration on clusters.
Yeah, I mean, that's not an aura stack.
You get 4 auras like that, and then you get like some from reservation and then some alive. You can still probably reach like 10 auras. Or like
you're not
7
wrong.
or 8.
You're not wrong.
I think there's always going to be something else. It doesn't matter whether aura stacker is the thing that's currently here. What people are going to be like tomorrow there's going to be something else and people are going to get mad about it again. And then it's the game, it just keeps changing, man. It's like saying I'm mad that I'm like not driving my horse anymore because horses were OP or some shit. And then someone came out with the car and you're like, fuck the horse, I got a car now. And tomorrow they're going to have something else and you're going to be like mad that your car is gone. Like, dude, it's the game. It's like, it's fun. It's ever changing and progressing. It's like, stop acting like a boomer. Like, holy. Like, because people, you read the comments on the forum and it's just like, me and my guild, 70 plus people were not playing anymore. And by the way, I looked at that guy's guild, it was 4 people. Yeah, like it's just these what, relax, dude.
What if you have the car and they give you the horse?
Yeah, that's where that sucks.
That's where we're at right now, I think.
No, dude. For player power, because there's another fucking car, dude. Like, you can stack something else. If you like stacking, dude, maybe someone should buy you some dominoes. You could stack them on your desk or something. But dude, when we're talking about stacker builds, there's stacker, there's armor stacker, there's other shit that you can do, man. And what if they introduce a new OP item and you're like, whoa, I want to stack that now? Sure.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, maybe Hateforge comes back or something like that, and it's pretty much it's a similar effect, although not as defensive.
I know it sucks losing your baby. I
didn't play it. I've just context.
But we used to stack decks. We used to love that shit too. Oh man, I loved my deck stackers back then, and then they killed that, and I'm like, all right, shit, I'll stack power charges now. Take that for a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
then they sort of made that shit. Yeah, it's man.
I think I'm over the loss of BV now. After all this time, I'm moving on. So it's the next thing. What's next? But yeah, let's talk a little bit about how
stage of acceptance.
Yeah.
After the grief of BV.
Let's talk a little bit about how the aura changes actually kind of not only improve, but also I guess some builds did get caught a little bit in the crossfire. If you were stacking aura mediums, or if you were stacking, curse mediums, or even if you were just using 1 or 2, you definitely took a hit here with the builds, specifically minion builds. If you were doing any sort of minion aura stuff, that's unlucky because that stuff got absolutely destroyed. You lost a lot of how you scaled your damage.
Also, elemental equilibrium as well.
Yeah, that's coming up though.
Aren't minion clusters broken though?
The larges are, but there's no mediums. The mediums are minion life.
They give life, right? Yep.
Yeah.
There has to be something.
Maybe there is. I haven't really looked into it, but the word on the street is that it's pretty rough for the old minion builds.
Do they give I don't know anything about minions, by the way, so I'm gonna be more asking questions, but they give minion life on the small passives, but they still have damage on the notables, right?
Let me check.
I'm not sure. I've never wanted to use them because the aura clusters were just so insane. I mean, the thing is, minion characters were like a glorified aura bot for your minions, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much how it played. So, obviously, if you change auras, it's going to be a big change for minions too.
I'm pretty sure if you ask Gazi, he's going to say they're still broken.
I actually did ask Gazi, and he said elemental minions are dead. You have to go impale. Basically, he said that to me. Or physical, he said, was the play now.
Mark my words, we're gonna look at the stats like 1/3 through the league, and it's gonna be all necros, man.
I mean, I don't doubt it, but
It's
it
always
definitely
like
did get
that.
hit.
Yeah,
It definitely took a hit here.
fair.
But then we also have some other builds that use stuff like the curses. Like if you wanted to get a nerve, if you want to get Carl, stuff like that. I've certainly done that in some of my builds, but those are now on small clusters, and you can only get one. So it's definitely a lot more of an opportunity cost. And I guess we could talk about that a little bit more. Would you ever consider sacrificing a jewel socket, which also got more powerful for damage over time builds and stuff like that, for a small cluster to get some of these aura nodes and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yes.
The aura smalls are insane. They give you 60% efficiency on a 50% aura.
Yeah, and they also give you 8
that's crazy.
efficiency per.
Yeah, considering
node
your
as well.
Uberlab enchant for hatred would have been 30% efficiency, right?
It's
now
like
they
an
give
Uber
like
Lab enchant for
no, it's not. It's 2.
4 to 5 points.
It's 2 Uberlab enchants. Because the Uberlab enchant was
efficiency's half as
15%. Yeah, but the Uberlab enchant is currently 15%. They're gonna double it to 30. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Really,
And the cluster is 60.
The thing is, you are still thinking about the old reservation.
I'm
Now,
not.
like, it has diminishing returns, so
Yeah.
you will reach a point where you can't reduce it anymore. You can't get it to, like, really, really low.
Yeah, so you can't stack, but if you want to have, like, you can basically almost fit an entire aura that you couldn't before with the current reservation. Like, changes going through. So you can't stack anymore. But you can have
so
an
if
If
extra
you already
aura.
have some on the tree, then you get the 60%. It doesn't affect the aura as much because you already
It
have
does.
some global.
Right, but it's still 60%.
Yeah.
It's double of anything that you could
Yeah,
have
it's a
ever
lot.
gotten from anything else, right?
Okay, so it depends. It really depends, Tuna. So to give you some perspective, I actually did the calculations for the aura stuff for my my build that I'm planning on playing, and with the new efficiency, taking the 60% node and all sorts of stuff like that, it's actually worse than the mana reservation that we have right now because of the way it scales. Basically, any mana reservation or a mana efficiency, sorry, that goes over 100% is a nerf.
Yeah.
So if you have 100% efficiency and you go to 101, you're now in nerf territory. You got nerfed with the new formula. But anything which has efficiency below 100 is a buff. That's basically the way you need to think about it.
Okay.
Now, 60% is a lot. So if you had 40% efficiency on your gear, or whether it's through the helmet or the tree or anything like that, and you go over the 100, you're getting nerfed.
Where were you getting 60? Where were you getting, what is it? Because 60%, 30% less reservation of hatred before this.
The thing is, it's not 30% less. It's not 30% less because it has diminishing returns the more you invest in. So eventually it becomes really bad. So
yeah, but like, how much do you realistically need for one person? There's only like 3 50% auras that you can use, right? Like.
So for my build to fit in Pride, Malevolence, Skitterbots, Warbanner, Flesh and Stone, and Hero to Purity, which is 6.
He's making the shopping list.
I need 78% global efficiency. I need 78% global efficiency, and I need to take one 50% small cluster, and I also need to have Enlighten 3 on all auras, which is doable. Right. Assuming that Enlighten gives 6% efficiency at 3.
It wouldn't have been more. You couldn't have done this now. Where were you gonna get fucking 40%
I take your point.
reservation?
I think the real win here, for most players is that efficiency is more readily available. Because if the small cluster didn't exist, you're right, I could never do this. But comparing it like apples to apples, if you go over 100%, it's a nerf. But getting to 100% is way easier, is the point.
Definitely, yeah.
So yes, most builds are going to be able to fit probably about an extra aura and a herald if you invest in some small clusters.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sweet. It's a massive damage boost.
Even just getting like, if you were just to get charisma on its own, if you're like that already in itself is huge. It's so much bigger for you than what it used to be. if you're just getting like charisma or something.
Just charisma, yeah. It's
like
true.
For example, but if you were to go over 50% of reservation, which is what you used to have to get, like you can't get 50% reservation unless you're starting to go for like jewels and all this stuff, right? Like getting 50% now is insane. So nobody's ever gonna have that issue outside of Orobots and Stackers, which was what they try to do. This to change.
The Necromancers.
Pretty good.
The thing is, before, if you were stacking if you were using the mods and Ailments that give you like reduced reservation, and maybe you had like some RMR on the tree, you could get some auras to like close to 0. Now you can't really do that.
Eleshar's right.
Like if you use the 30% Ailments and the normal RMR nodes that you get on the tree, you can pretty much get one aura that you choose to 0. Now you can't really do that.
But not to 0, no. But yeah, I understand what you mean.
Mm.
But in what situation would you care about that?
No, I wasn't using them anyway.
Fitting auras is like big, right? If you go over 50% reservation through the helmet chant and your normal RMR, which is doable, then yeah, like it's an nerf on that one specific aura.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall it's a buff. Everyone will be able to fit more auras unless you're a Necro, an aura stacker, a curse bot, or an aura bot, pretty much.
You're gonna be able to fit more auras even without going for the smalls, for the small clusters.
Yes.
It's huge. It's really, really huge.
But the small clusters
auras, the thing about auras is not just the aura, is the opportunity cost that you get using like a better Watchers that skills your build better, and like you can save a lot of stuff on your gear. It's really nice having extra auras.
I agree.
This is enough to uniques like Hero's Truth and stuff like that, though, which give you 50% reservation to hatred and stuff. It's definitely enough to that, no doubt.
But they kept the power level of stuff that completely removes the mana cost from your auras still in the game. They have a different wording, and it's like doesn't cost mana or something. It just doesn't reserve. So they only nerfed the ones that give you % reservation, but they kept the ones that give you completely reduced cost still pretty powerful.
Yeah, like the uniques generally got like what's the helmet that comes from Katarina? I'm really bad with names when it comes to this stuff. Devouring the item took a big hit. Prism Guard. There's a lot of
the chest, Victoria's influence, stuff like that. Yeah,
those took a big hit for sure.
Everything with auras on it took a hit, pretty much.
Did the Vertex get a hit?
I think Sakawal's didn't get a hit.
Actually,
not sure.
Yeah.
Sakawal did definitely.
Oh, okay.
It did in the reservation part. The Avian part is still fine.
What about,
actually, never mind.
Saint, Heretics Veil, Influence, Prism Guardian, Synth Rings.
Did they get nerfed as well?
Influence. Yeah, I mean everything pretty much got touched.
Okay, fair enough.
Stuff like the Vertex that has a mana multiplier, or Corruption on helmets that have mana multipliers, how do those affect the new reservation? It's like really niche cases, right? But
they're gonna have to look at that, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I'm sure they're aware. Like, it's kind of crazy how many things. Like, they want to change one thing, and there's all these things. Like Grim and I were.
Effect, yeah,
Grim and I yesterday were looking at like. Maybe you should tell the story about the gloves, man. Like that was pretty mind blowing.
So we're looking at bleed explosions from Gladiator, and we came across the gloves Hemophilia, which, in theory, if you could proliferate bleed, would be as good as an explodey chest because it deals 5% of physical damage from an explosion, a corpse explosion. And we were trying to find ways to apply bleed with chance on hit, just generic bleed on hit. And we looked through every single modifier in the game, and they all say chance to bleed on hit with weapons or their local modifiers on weapons themselves.
With attacks.
And we were like, what's going on here? And then we took a look at the legacy modifiers, and they're all generic chance to bleed on hit. They had removed them all. So stuff like this happens all the time. We just either don't remember it or we didn't realize it at the time. But chances are there was a time when people were proliferating the bleed with hemophilia gloves and getting an explodey chest way back in the day before explodey even existed. And that got removed.
So
On
there's
the
always
topic
these
of
like
exploded
things.
chest.
Yeah, go on then. Sorry.
On the topic of exploded chest, now it's gonna be even harder to and even like less used because you are so starved on the prefixes on chests now because you need like your defenses, you need your life. Maybe you get a curse or something on the prefixes, and you want explodey. I don't think explodey is gonna be used much this league.
I tried it the league after it got nerfed and I hated it. And ever since it's just Herald of Ice, Gladiator, Cultist.
I did enjoy it. I mean, I used it this league and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like I wasn't scaling it, and I was mostly just realizing it was a thing in blights. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
when everything's like so close together, then you're doing a blight and the whole row dies. You're like,
yeah,
that's awesome.
It's getting nice.
Okay. We still have so much to cover. Okay. So I guess is there any other discussion when you talk about with auras? I think in general it's a buff for your average player who just uses 4 or 5, and it's a nerf obviously the heavy builds. Can we get into the elemental damage over time stuff and the removal of pretty much 2 big keystones?
If I guess I'll start there.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Do you want to just go over the changes so when we talk about it, makes sense?
Yeah, so basically, Elemental Overload is now basically you have to deal a critical strike with the ability that then does the damage over time. So things like Vortex is not really going to work with it. Things like Cold Snap, unless you're like, it's not like most of that stuff is not going to work with EO at all. Maybe like Armageddon Brand if you build enough critical strike chance to then crit with that every 4 seconds, you're going to be able to get the benefits of EO. So yeah, that's basically the change to EO. Whereas EE is being pretty much completely removed, but not really. It's being moved to Ranger and it's becoming a 25% exposure instead of negative 50% resistance. So essentially, it's stronger than Wave of Conviction and things like that for builds that are able to do that, like make use of EE, which is, I think, in my opinion, kind of clunky already as it is. It's not gonna. I feel like it's not gonna see that much use. EO is gonna see use, just not in the cases that we see it now. So that's kind of what happened. Damage over time, and to compensate, they gave 150% more damage to basically all ignites across the board, and they gave, I don't know how much overall percent wise it was, but they gave a lot of flat damage over time to, like all the cold skills. So basically, they're all baseline stronger without having to invest into these things like E and EO, which in my opinion made the skills really clunky to play. Really, really not fun at all to play because you had to, apply Stormbrand, make sure you're critting, having uptime on that, worrying about that, making sure you're not getting any flat damage from any sources otherwise you break your entire build, that sort of stuff. It's so much nicer now. Your clear is basically doing like 150% more damage. So it's a huge buff in that regard, in the quality of life regard, and in how the builds will play. In regards to the actual true numbers of how much these abilities are doing, currently there's a lot of people that are arguing that it's a lot less. Maybe in the scenario of RF it's a lot less, but overall the numbers are subject to change, and it's a buff in how the builds are played, in my opinion. There's no situation where I was ever like, I'm having fun applying EE. So it's like compels me a lot more to play. And for people that know more about how these skills work and the maths behind them, like Lighty, he went over it yesterday, and he says overall it's about a 10% buff to all the abilities across the board. There's other people that are arguing that it's not. So I'm not going to comment on that because I haven't done the maths. I just comment on the player perspective side of things. It's a buff because it makes you want to play them more because it's less clunky and it's a lot more fun to have 100% more clear. So yeah, that's what I think. Sorry about rambling again.
About Elemental Overload, you can't actually apply it anymore using a second skill. You have to use it on your main skill.
Yeah, yeah.
At least it says in the patch. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to crit with the skill that's applying the damage over time effect, which is, I think, what I mentioned. I hope I didn't miss that part, because that's the most important part, yeah.
Yep. I think my perspective on it, I haven't played a whole lot of dot builds, but from the numbers side of things, it's too early to tell. If you are actually going and saying, okay, this is exactly 25% less damage right now, I feel like it's a little premature. We don't have the patch notes. We don't have the tree. We don't have the full information about how all this stuff is going to work together. You probably haven't factored in auras and getting additional auras. You probably haven't factored in additional skill slots. Maybe you can use another extra curse on hit setup here. We have stuff like Awaken Hex touchback, all sorts of stuff like that. There's so many different factors that you really can't say whether or not you're going to come out ahead or not. So I guess building on what Tuna's saying, there are things that we do know, and that is that dot skills are going to feel way better to play. More specifically, map clear. So RF used to be one of the premium clear skills. It was like one of the best. Walking Simulator, Omega Lol. And, it was really, really fun. And I think that people are neglecting the fact that you have basically similar damage to what your single target is permanently throughout the map. So you're going to be running through the map and everything is going to be melting way faster. The res, the magic pop-ups, all that stuff like that. But in addition to that, if you were a build that scaled explosions, like with Elementalist or anything like that, the Ignite change affects that. And those scale percentage life. So an Ignite Explodey build is a very, very real possibility. So Ignite builds may possibly be incredibly powerful for clearing in 3.16. There's a lot of potential there. And I think a lot of people are just glazing over that fact and just looking at raw numbers and how much you're going to do on single target without really factoring everything else in.
I want to mention one thing, though, in that regard, is that especially because of these things being given to us ahead of time, I think it's really important for people to keep voicing their concerns in regards to what they like. They're seeing the numbers and they've got experience with these builds and they know what it's going to turn out to be. They plugged it into PoE. I think GGG is looking for feedback, and you have to make yourself heard, because if these changes go through and your build, all these builds suck ass, actually that's also going to be the fault on us, the players and people that didn't give the feedback, and we kind of like let this happen. Of course it's GGG's fault for letting it happen too, but we have to sort of be loud about it so that they pay more attention to these things. And that's also why I think they give us so much information ahead of time, especially ahead of patch notes, so that when they do release patch notes and the numbers are final and we have to sort of like go by those numbers for the rest of the league, we can be sure that they've had time to consider at least the things that we think need buffing or not. So
I do agree to some extent with you, Tuna, but as well as I do, activating like an extra aura can pendulum swing the damage from like 20% less to like 10% more from like one aura. And also they've introduced new gearing options and scaling options on affixes, on like rings, amulets, weapons, and they've really, really juiced up the amount of dot multi on jewels, kind of restoring some of that power that we lost when they nerfed gear.
They increased like 5% or something on gloves and other pieces.
Yeah. So obviously that primarily affects endgame players. Like if you're leveling up and stuff like that, it's not going to be as smooth, and you're probably not going to be killing Cirrus on day 3 with a dot build. Well, maybe not. But I think that it's too early to whip out the calculator, because there's so many unknown factors, like the Flame Surge. Like, what is Flame Surge now do? Like, how's that going to affect damage? Maybe that's the single target solution you were looking for, and now you actually have massively insane buff clear to boot. So I just think it's a little bit premature to kind of like bash the changes. I think people should focus on the mechanical alterations, which, as you pointed out, Tuna, are all upside.
Definitely, yeah.
I think the biggest change is the buff to medium cluster jewels. The 8% damage over time multi is such a huge buff. It went from 4 to 8.
Clusters.
Oh, it's normal jewels? Okay.
Yeah, it's normal jewel with 4 to 8. They basically doubled that, and they also got Ignite speed.
You're muted, by the way, Tuna.
Oh yeah, I wasn't muted for... so they doubled the jewels, and they also added faster Ignite to jewels as well, if I believe.
They actually didn't just double the jewels. They over tripled it. So they changed the normal dot multi-jewel mod from 2 to 4 to I think it's 6 to 8. And then they also added a new global dot multi mod, which is 4 to 6. So the amount of damage you can get from these jewels is ridiculous. And the endgame potential for dot builds has gotten way, way stronger.
Yeah.
Obviously, the cost of that, though, is elemental equilibrium and elemental overload.
Yep.
You find it, Elesshar?
People are so mad about this in the chat. Like, holy shit.
I didn't find where they say about the mediums. So I guess, yeah, I saw the part where they talk about normal jewels. Yeah, maybe I misread it when I read it.
What's in the chat, Tuna?
People will be mad about it, about like I don't think people understand how complicated this game is, right? Like there's so much stuff in PoE that I'm sure they're not trying to like release things being complete garbage, right? They don't want their game to be shit and skill gems to be shit. And like obviously like as players, how many people actually play this game on LeagueStar? Like hundreds of thousands, right? So the data we can provide and is a lot more than what they could ever do, right? Like we're basically testing their game to some extent, and them being like a small team in New Zealand, they can't do as much as we can. And there's people that spend time playing the game more than they spend developing it even, right? Like, I'm sure that when I play at the peak, like 14 hours a day, they're not doing 14-hour days. So when it comes to understanding a build, I know that I have more knowledge about a certain specific build than most of the developers there, right? It's natural. No?
If you play it all day, every day, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
If you play one specific build.
I think it's completely normal. Like, I'm sure Captain Lance knows more about RF than most of the developers at GGG, right? So his complaints and also his feedback is valuable, obviously. Like that's fine. That's completely fine. So us being this whole like beta tester shit, like you guys are actually trolling because it's normal. It's normal for people to know more about the game than them in some regards.
You might know more about like how it feels to play and like the interactions, but there's like some mechanics that you don't really know, like they know because they coded it. I feel like.
I think that okay. So immediately, there's an issue here because you said Lighty, one of the best players, said there's a 10% buff in most cases, and then there's another player, Captain Lance, who says it's like a 25% nerf on RF. So like, who's wrong? Like, well, they both did the math.
Specifically on RF, right? Captain Lance.
I've also had other people say it's not a 25% nerf on RF, it's a 10% nerf. And the problem here that you have is that, as you said, Tina, there's so many different ways to build, and there's so many different factors. Are you using the jewels? You're not using the jewels. You know, are you a life stacking RF build? Definitely, are you an energy shield stacking RF build?
But as long as we're allowed about it, GGG will consider these things, right? Which is what the point I was trying to put across earlier is that like if everyone stays quiet, then they're like, I guess let's put our changes through. Everyone's happy, pog. But if people are then like, wait a minute, this is scuffed, or like if someone else is like, actually this is buffed, and they have to look at something twice as a result of that, looking at your like almost like double checking your work is always going to be better than not, right?
I think, okay, here's the actual problem. The real problem is that gems are not balanced around builds or the notion that players have X amount of damage. That's not how they balance the gems. They told us that in the podcasts. They take all of the gems and they measure them all against each other in a vacuum, just the skill gems by themselves, right? And they also do the same with support gems. So all of the support gems which have negative effects give you X amount more, all right? And then obviously that produces a result, whether it's good or bad. Different mechanics are better than others. But overall, that's why the numbers that we got given are the way they are. And the problem is that elemental equilibrium and elemental overload are not part of that. And they haven't compensated enough, potentially. I don't know. I haven't done the math myself. enough for those changes. So they can't just buff the skill gems more, though. Well, maybe they can, but that would basically make those skill gems so vastly more powerful than all the others in like League Start and in leveling. Like everyone would be leveling Vortex because it hits like 40% harder than every other ability, right? You can't just do that. So they need to add like power back in other places. And they've tried to do that with the jewels, right? But it's possible that they just didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's not as simple as people make it seem. I do think that the elemental equilibrium change is a pretty big one there.
I think control destruction now is almost useless after the change to EE and EO. Like, I think control destruction.
I use that in my build, but yeah, go on.
Okay, never mind then.
I mean, it's not going to be useless because not all builds are going to be able to go for EO, right? So obviously it's not useless.
Yeah,
it's still a huge multiplier for the builds that don't go for EO.
Yeah, true. I didn't think about the dots.
Yeah. But for the builds that want to go for EO, yeah, you can't use it anymore. It's like, it's even more opportunity cost. I mean, it makes even more sense now than it did before because it's like, oh yeah, you want crit? Don't take the fucking gem that gives you 90% less crit. Like, holy shit, it's so obvious. There's other multipliers that they can use. It's just that like it's 3% less, so people are mauled about it.
I think that people need to realize that the base skill gems are vastly more powerful, right? Like stuff like Vortex, Ignite is way, way more powerful. And yes, they took away Elemental Equilibrium. Yes, they took away Elemental Overload. These are exterior multipliers. It's entirely possible that they add those back through a new unique or something like that, through a new support gem, which we haven't seen yet, or anything like that as well. You know, there's so many different things. I think people just need to, you know, obviously voice their concerns. Of course, that's really good. But then, like, have a little bit of faith that GGG might actually deliver. I mean, they have delivered on a lot of stuff they've already talked about.
Yeah. It's night and day since last league, right? Like, holy.
Without doing the math, it feels like from the duels alone and the base damage of the skill being higher, it feels like I think it might get a buff because if you have a higher damage skill, all the more multipliers that you have on your chest, like on your links, scale the skill way harder because the starting point is way higher. Yeah. And then you also have jewels that you can get some of them more damage that you lost from EO. You can get it back from the jewels. So I don't think it's such a big deal as people are making it out to be. I think it's going to be fine. I didn't do the math, but that's what it looks like.
Numbers are such an easy thing to solve as well if you think about it. Whereas like how a build plays is not, which is something that we've always discussed about in the past as well. Why things like Winter Orb and BV are so good is because they were just good to play, right? And that's why people played them, even if they were like a little bit less damage or whatever. Like, anyways, regardless, if the play style is good, then that does so much more for that skill gem than anything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, the problem I have, right, is so I'm not an RF player, right? But like, RF clear is infinitely better. That's a fact. It's just a straight up fact. There's no arguing with that. So you've now got a very, very strong powerhouse of a skill. And yeah, maybe a single target took a hit and you can't just be a AFK stand on the boss RF bot anymore. Well, how else can you solve that problem? Maybe you can use another skill. Maybe you can use like Divine Eye or something like that. I don't know what specifically you can do. But like, you now actually have like a really, really high strength. Like RF could be, you know, on the power of potentially like, you know, an old BV of just running through the map with explosions going everywhere. I don't know. But like it's just different. It's not necessarily weaker in my opinion.
Buffing the base damage, that like the clear damage, definitely helps the skill mechanically. So you can invest into other stuff. You could like invest into Explodey and make like Explodey chains so you have even better clear, or you can just get crazy single target with using something else. Like Scorching Ray got buffed a lot. Like people could use Scorching Ray. Flame Wall is really good. Then we have new stuff like Flame Surge. We don't know how that works with damage over time. Like there's definitely something that can make the build work, given the base damage for clear so high.
Yeah, I think calling it a nerf is disingenuous, honestly, because Blade Vortex, that is a nerf. No questions about it. That shit got axed on every single angle. RF just got pushed in a different direction, in my opinion. But, as I said, everyone's like entitled to voice their concerns. I think that it's good to do so, and maybe it'll see a good change. Because I think the main thing, which is good, and it's a good indication that, this stuff works, is that, last league, Vortex, like they changed hypothermia, so it kind of sucked for like Vortex and stuff like that, and that got reverted. So, obviously this stuff does work, and if it needs to be altered, it will probably be altered, which is good.
One issue I have is that the clear for RF for most of these skills, it wasn't the best, but that's not the thing that's mostly affected. Like, if it turns out that their damage is actually lower, the single target is going to be terrible, right?
But that's not actually a possibility. The gem itself, without EE and EO applied, is infinitely higher, right?
Yeah.
Well, not infinitely, but it's much, much higher. I mean,
I wish I knew more about like the scaling for these skills, because I personally don't know. But yeah, I'll just trust people that have played these. I guess
the clear is better. The single target might be worse. I think that's the general.
But everything else got buffed, right? So it's like kind of like damage over time are sort of losers in the end. Aside for like it being a lot more fun to play, which is what I thought was the best thing about it, obviously.
Chaos and physical damage over time and bleed, massively buffed. Yeah, and poison actually as well, massively buffed.
Okay.
The only is like cold dot. Anything that used EE or EO is up for debate, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Well, that's a lot. I guess one thing, a cherry on top here, is that the change to E actually is also another nerf to Ourobots. But I mean, just throw it all on there. Why not?
Minion builds.
Yeah, the minion builds are in real trouble. Like, that's something that's no question. They're in real big trouble because they didn't get any changes. 25%
exposure though, which is higher than what you can get from anything else. A 10% pen that you wouldn't have otherwise. And you can still get that with the scepters, which is how they got it.
Yeah, I mean, true. It's still nowhere near as good as enough, straight up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still good. You are right. They'll probably still go Avatar of Fire and all stuff like they did, actually. Let's move on to a different topic here, which is the delivery of the aspirational Uber content that they promised. It seems like pretty much everything that they mentioned is going to be there, well, at least from what I can see so far. So they told us we were getting Uber Breach, they've shown it, Uber Blight, they've shown it, and Uber 5-Ways, we've seen that too. What do you guys think?
I feel like new content is always better, even though it might feel kind of repetitive because it's content that we already did, and that's just making it a little harder, but it's still better than not having any content. It's just like new content is always better, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I have an outlook on this that like anything new is good, definitely, yeah. Even hard mode.
Hard mode, oh my
god. I mean, like this, you know what I mean? It's just like free content. I'll take it, dude. I'll eat it up.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about this content, though, we don't know about the breach stones, but we do know that the blights and the emblems actually do come from the lower versions of it. So while you're running 5-Ways, you'll get the unrelenting emblems, and while you're running blight, you'll get the blight ravaged. What do you guys think of that? So the people farming the maps themselves will actually just get the materials, so you don't actually have to trade for them.
I think it's a good gameplay loop. It's kind of like how when you do bosses, you drop invitations and stuff to do like the bosses in a harder way. I feel like it's an okay gameplay loop that you just do the content and you drop harder content of the same type.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm concerned about is the mods on the actual like Uber version of the encounters, because the one that gives you 4% pen every time you kill the legions, that might be a little bit overtuned, or like maybe it's just a mod and it's not like fixed, and it's just like a random range of mods that can be on the map, because the 4% penetration every time you kill them, you can reach a point after a few times you kill the bosses that you can't tank it unless you convert to chaos.
It's not going to be like how we currently run 5-Ways. And also, by the way, it's 4% per emblem now. So
True.
you put
We
5
don't know
emblems.
that. We only saw one emblem.
No, I guess you're right. Yeah.
It could be different mods.
Yeah,
They could be
that's
different mods.
True.
But if they're like penetration, if penetration is that common, we'll see a lot of people using the timeless jewel that converts the damage, elemental damage that you take into chaos. Maybe they're doing something like themed around the jewels. Like if you drop that jewel, you convert the damage to chaos. So like you need to run the keystone to run the Legion, maybe something like that. We don't know.
I have no idea. I think
That'd be
it's
cool.
Okay. I mean, okay, so we don't know anything about the rewards outside of what we can infer, right, from what we've seen on the tooltips. So let's start with the legions, because that's what we're talking about here. It's obvious that these are going to be way, way harder. It's not something you're going to be taking 6 people into, from my perspective at least. Right?
Agreed. Especially with Orbots, how they currently are.
Yeah.
Or, well, how they will be. Sorry.
Yeah. So immediately these aren't going to be kind of like the XP in a can that we see today. So I actually imagine these will probably be cheaper than normal emblems. What do you guys think of that?
In traits, of course, yeah, that makes sense actually. But it depends on whether it's like a currency that you apply to the emblem, right?
It's not. It's an emblem itself. They put it in the map device. Okay. Yeah. So you drop full emblems.
My take on this is I did a lot of 5-ways last league because I was doing carries, and you don't really get hit in 5-ways if you just build, if you make like the build that is specific for 5-ways. You might get hit once the whole run if you misplay.
That's because you one-shot
so
everything though, right?
Yeah, you do one-shot everything, but it only gives 10% increased life for every round. So like you should still be able to one-shot everything. Like my build was way over killing stuff.
Technically, we think it's like right now, as we know it, we think it's per emblem, right? So technically, 50% per emblem.
If you do 5 emblems, it might be not viable. But if you just add 1 or 2, it might still be fine.
And it already had life scaling.
True.
The thing is also that it's like there is. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain there is actually a scaling life modifier on resetting it anyway.
Yeah.
Like the monsters do get harder.
100%.
I'm not sure if that's a more or an increased modifier. If it's more, that stuff's going to be unkillable by the end.
Yeah.
That's cool though, right?
Yeah. The thing is, we don't know what they drop. If they drop other stuff, it depends like how the encounter works. If it just drops the same things and just gives 10% extra loot, it's kind of boring. They should add some other thing added to the encounters. It's like a really easy way for them to add new uniques. Like you do the Uber encounter with this amount of emblems or whatever, and you drop the uniques. It's like such an easy way to add the new items in the game, I think.
I agree, actually.
I think 10% improved rewards, that's not increased.
True.
What is improved?
We don't know.
I have no idea. Does that mean it's going to basically not be armor anymore? Maybe. I don't know. Does it mean there's going to be 10% more like reward tiles? Like it's so anomalous. We don't know. We have no idea. But I wouldn't be surprised if they added a new type of timeless jewel with like, powered up like power or something like that. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Also, do we know if we can do a mix of normal emblems and big emblems together?
I'm almost certain you should be able to. It almost feels like that the emblems are built so that you can mix and match them. Like they're not going to make it binary, right? You either have insane mods scaling every single wave, or you have none. Like putting one in is probably viable, right?
They're making it similar to Delirium, where like you increase the difficulty like linearly. Actually, it's not linearly because the closer you get to 5 emblem is going to be way harder. Kind of like Delirium, that the closer you get to the 100% Delirium, the stronger the mobs become exponentially, right? They're trying to make it like that. I think it's nice because you can choose like the level of difficulty at every stage.
Yeah.
Like you can choose like at the start, you can choose like 2 emblems, 3 emblems, 4 emblems, 5 emblems, and then you start ramping up into the Uber emblems with 5.
The thing I really want to point out here though is because these drop from the emblems themselves, they're free. You're literally getting them for free. Okay? So when you're running normal 5 ways, just add these new things on top as additional profit or a 1 emblem refund. Right?
Agreed, yeah.
That's insane. You can't look at this additional difficulty as something you're buying or whether it's like efficient or anything like that, because they're just free. They're free additional chances at improving the difficulty of your content that you're already doing.
Wait, when you run normal at Ziri or like Shipper Elder, when you drop the fragment for the next year, you consider that in your profit, right? It's like really important.
Eventually,
you're right.
Eventually, it's gonna end up being part.
It's gonna be. It has a monetary value attached to it.
But if you're running 5 ways anyway, I would argue that it's much more similar to be able to run 1 extra emblem.
True.
Right.
It's like 20% extra runs, pretty much. You're saying.
Yeah, and then that run that you did is actually better. You get more loot.
Yeah.
Right? See how it kind of works? You're getting like a refund, and that refund is actually more powerful, but it's harder. Right? So I think it's really, really well designed. And with the blighted maps as well. Imagine doing your blighted maps, and you get more blighted maps. Pretty good. And those blighted maps, you can put 9 oils on, or 27. I don't know if it's going to be 9 or 27. Probably 9.
I mean...
and that's insane, right?
Yeah,
great. We used to talk about this before the last league, that we wanted more aspirational content, and we wanted a gameplay loop that you play the content and you do more content of the same thing. Like it self-sustains the same content. That's what we wanted. What we asked for last league. Remember when we were talking about it? I think it's a good change.
Yeah, I think people need to make sure they understand that it's not like, oh man, the new content, it's only 30% better, because it's not 30% better. It's free, right?
True.
Like it's actually free content. Like not like as in like we got it for free. It's actually like you do your blighted map and these things drop, like in addition to everything else you got before, and you get it and you get to run another one. So it's like whatever the drop rate is of the blighted map, you can increase your profits by that amount and then multiply that by how much better that map is on top of that as well. So it's actually insane buff to endgame farming and aspirational content if you can do it.
Yeah, at least we have a reason to upgrade our builds now.
Yes. Well, I hope.
Yeah.
5 ways, definitely. Yeah. You need to upgrade carry.
One thing that I want to also state from these defense things and that being readily more excited, like that's also a reason to upgrade our build, right?
Yeah, more quality of life. Totally.
Yeah. I think it's hard for me to look at anything in these manifestos and be like, any of these things are bad for the health of the game and me as a player. I don't see anything here that's like... I'd love to see, or maybe someone tell me, like, if there's something that's actually, like, terrible, but, like, I don't see anything.
I think the big red flags here are elemental damage over time, specifically on single target. Minion builds, I think supports are completely fine. It's just my opinion. And pure evasion characters. Those are the 3 big things, which I think are, maybe a little bit...
Yeah.
Yikes.
Need to be looked at. I was mauled as soon as I saw the raider changes, by the way. I was not happy.
Yeah.
I was getting angry at people in Discord as well, saying like, oh, it's not that bad. I was like, you don't understand, man.
Mad.
Yeah, I was like really mad.
Going back to the Uber version of the content, let's say you drop a fragment or you drop like the Uber Legion, right? The Uber Legion emblem. Do you think the price of the emblems is going to be dictated by the best efficient way to run them, like 5 at the same time, and it's not going to be worth it to just run it yourself? Because what you could do is just sell the Uber emblem and just buy a normal emblem, and if the price difference is enough that it's worth doing that, people are actually going to do that, and the only people that are going to run the actual content are going to be the people that have like 5, like perfect build that can do like the 5 version, like the hardest version of the content.
So from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think, in the podcast that we had with Chris, Tuna said the rewards from the aspirational content don't even need to be better, right? And I actually do think that they might have considered that, because the Uber 5 ways, at best, let's say that it's 50% more loot from improved. It's way harder than 50% harder, man.
Yeah.
Like, if they don't drop additional uniques, it's way harder. Like, you need like a Giga Chad build for that. And then even then, you might still brick it. I think that the actual Uber versions of the content are going to be way cheaper than their counterparts because there's just fewer people who can run it.
I'd like to make a point to what you said, though. The reward for me in that regard was a ladder, right? Ranking on a ladder.
True.
So if there's no ladder for this shit, so what you said about me saying there doesn't need to be a reward, then that doesn't apply to this. Because I was trying to stress to him that the reward is the ladder. Like your reward for playing a League of Legends or a Dota game is your rank going up, right?
I still think there is a reward, though. It's a badge of honor because can your build do 5 unrelenting emblems?
Yeah, sure.
Yes or
definitely.
no?
I agree.
It's still cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
But you're not going to be like running them over and over. You're not going to be incentivized. Like, you might do them like a couple times, right? But you're not going to be incentivized to actually have that as part of your content loop.
I don't think that's true, actually. I think there's going to be 2 applications of the Uber content. There's going to be the people who just like, okay, so I'm doing 5 ways. Oh, I got an unrelenting one. Oh boy, next one's going to be spicy, and they put it in. They got a free refund on like their Mariketh or something like that. So they like they get super juiced. And then there's going to be the people. Obviously, some people can't run them, right? They're going to be too hard, and they sell them. And there's going to be people who buy them, and because they're harder, because the rewards aren't like 20 times as better or whatever, I think they're going to be cheaper. But that automatically makes them more rewarding in themselves because no one can run them. There's going to be like a glut of them in the economy. Someone has to run them. And it's just going to be, if there's no one to run them, they'll get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until someone can do them. And they just make absolutely massive bank, right? Because it's just so much cheaper than the normal content. And it offers more rewards on top of that.
Kind of like inscribed ultimatums in a way.
Exactly, right?
But not really, because they weren't that hard. But yeah, like, exactly. Like, a mirror was like 230, and Inscribed Ultimatum was like 150 or something. So,
yeah. The thing that balanced the Inscribed Ultimatum wasn't how hard it was the riskiness of it.
Yeah, or Elesshar Alta-4ing.
What do you mean? No.
You can break a 5-way. It's totally a thing, right?
Yeah.
You can absolutely break a blighted map, 100%. You can break a breach as well. If you die in a Chayula breach, in the Uber Chayula, or bad luck, dude, it's gonna boop, it's done.
Yeah.
So there's certainly risk. You can absolutely break your investment, and you're gonna need a good build to do it. And I think the main thing here is, guess what? You're gonna need a defensive build to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't do Uber Blight and get one shot 4 times because they're just going to get to the pump and you're done. You can't do breach and get one shot because the breach portal will close because you went fast enough. So you need to invest in defenses. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with investing in defenses. I just don't invest super early.
Yeah.
I like making well-rounded characters later on.
I was never going to go at you, Elesshar. I was just saying that it's good that you're incentivized to build a reasonably well-rounded character. I'm sure there's going to be people who off-screen everything, and I'm sure the 5 ways are going to be dominated by Headhunter 2k life builds because you can get one shot anyway. But for the Blight one, I think specifically, it's pretty good. But yeah, it's pretty exciting. Okay, well, the thing is, though, everything we've talked about here, we don't even know what Scourge League is yet.
Yeah.
We haven't even announced the league.
We haven't even seen the passive tree as well, and the uniques.
There's so much. I guess, do you guys just want to like have a little bit of a theory session? Like, we've got Trickster, Gladiator, and a bunch of like tree nodes, a bunch of just all sorts of stuff like that, which is just completely up in the air. We have no idea about, right? What do you guys think about that? Do you think the tree is gonna be mega buffed?
No, not mega buffed. But yeah, we're gonna get some cool stuff. Like spell suppression is gonna be cool. And
the thing, you go ahead.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna be mega buffed. No, I think the tree's already got a lot of really compelling options on there. So yeah.
The thing about the tree is that you need to think of it like node efficiency, like how much power you're getting per node, and most nodes are pretty similar. Like, for example, if you look at crit sense or crit multi, you get like per node, you get around 15%, 10 to 15% crit multi, or 20-25% crit chance. So like, and all the other nodes are like balanced around like a baseline. They won't add like crazy nodes that are way stronger than the ones that we already have. Unless the only thing that changes sometimes is like the node at the end of the big clusters of nodes, that those can be really powerful, and you can annoy those as well. But yeah, the only thing usually that changes is big notables and the nodes at the end of the big cluster nodes.
I mean, the thing is, like, there's a lot of those things that they said they're adding, right? They said they're adding new max res notables to Marauder side. They're obviously getting the spell suppression. We're getting new keystones with Ghost Dance, the hybrid armor energy shield one. Like, there's so much stuff they're adding to the tree, which is just going to shake a whole lot of stuff up, right?
But if you look at the max res on the other side of the trees, they're like usually just one max res or one max cold res. I don't think it's such a strong stat that they're gonna be careful in how much they add of it. Like, they're gonna add like a very few percent.
I mean, it's like Soul Steel as well, though, right? Soul Steel is insane.
True.
But yeah, I think those are the things which are really going to be pretty interesting to have a go at and like kind of min-max when they release that tree. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we've seen from Scourge then. Do you guys got any theories about what it is, or is it kind of just like you got no idea?
I actually have no idea. I usually don't get too excited about the league. I get excited about like what they do with the builds in the league, like the options that we have for making builds.
Yeah.
I don't get too hyped about like it's a circle with mobs. It's another circle with mobs.
Is that a product
it's a
of
circle and the stop time?
Is that a product of like the last few leagues being a little bit underwhelming, or
maybe?
Because for me,
Yeah,
I
like
used to get
synthesis
so excited about
Yeah.
like new systems and things like that. But
Don't
like
step
last
out,
few
though.
leagues have just been like click, kill. Ooh, like I don't know. I really hope it's not something like that again. I really liked Expedition, like more than I thought I would. I thought I would hate the vendors and I like kind of for late game. Like, do you guys remember last league? I said exactly what happened this league. That early game Expedition is gonna feel so good. The vendors are gonna be amazing, ROG and gambling and all that stuff. And then it's just gonna become
Pre-nerf?
like, it's just gonna become
Pre-buff?
well, like before the league even went live, when they showed us the vendors.
Okay.
I was saying that, and then eventually it just became like just re-roll for currency on ROG, right? That's like I literally anyways. But I hope that the systems in the next league are sort of like game changing in a way that like you actually want to spend time thinking about what you're doing and setting yourself up for things, rather than it just being like a click and that's it, like ultimatum kind of. Like
Bring synthesis back. You have to actually plan the pathing, so you build like the big.
They hated it.
It was so good because it was bad at the start, and then they fixed it, and people had already quit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what it is either. I actually thought it was like a toggleable kind of like Inferno hard mode thing that you could activate, but I mean, they've revealed all the Uber content, but so I don't think it's that anymore. But I have no idea what it is. But one thing we can talk about is the corrupted currencies. I think this is actually more impactful than people realize. So when you take a look at like a league like Ultimatum or even Expedition, these leagues don't really have anything which is their own unique reward, right? It kind of sucks. When you look at Delhi, you look at cluster jewels, when you look at synthesized uniques and synthesized items, fractured items, those are like defining features of those leagues.
Yeah.
This league has one. It's whatever that corrupted fusing orb does, and I'm assuming there's going to be like corrupted chaos and exalt, maybe. Like, I don't know. I think it's definitely got a lot of potential there, depending on what those currencies do.
We only saw 2 new items: the thing that you put in your inventory and the corrupted fusing, right? There might be more. We don't really know.
If there's a fusing, there has to be other currencies, right? Like, imagine if it's just the fusing. Oh, that would suck. But like, surely they add others.
There was a skill gem in the inventory too, which is obviously pretty obvious that they added skill. But I would have expected after last league that they added so many skill gems that there wouldn't be a new one this league. So
I mean, they have to add new ones, right? But yeah, I agree. They did add a lot last league.
Yeah. The ultimatum didn't add any, right?
Didn't they? No, they had one. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was a Hydrosphere? I can't remember.
No.
Was it Trinity?
Support gems, I guess are
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. They added like just Trinity or something like that in one of the leagues, and I was like, oh, okay. The other thing to talk about here, though, is that, like, I mean, with all this, there's a new league, there's all of this, there's also the Atlas, which is completely getting, changed, I suppose. Like, it's getting massively changed. There's going to be so much more stuff to figure out, like refigure out, than in previous leagues. And then on top of that, they're also adding, I'm pretty sure, Ultimatum back as well. They said that they were going to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, who knows what they're going to do with that? There's just so much new stuff that is going to be on the table, because Ultimatum is going to get its own Atlas passives as well.
Yep.
Okay, about the Atlas, I'm really concerned that the identity of, like, the zones that we have now are going to be, like, meshed together. Like, we're going to lose some passives that we have now because we're going to have less zones. But we don't know.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely true, Elesshar. If you're gonna, like, okay, I don't know if it is, but they did mention that when Expedition goes core, they're making the currencies bind on pickup. So that either means it's going core this league or in a future league. But let's say it goes core this league, just hypothetically. That's 2 more leagues that they're adding to the pool, and that means they need to add 2 more sets of Atlas passives as well, and they're taking it from 8 to 4. That's gonna be. There needs to be either a different solution, or there's going to be so many damn Atlas passes, which use so many different things for so many different leagues. So yeah, like there's going to be so much. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So much is good for us, right? We love that stuff. We eat this game up. So yeah, maybe for other people it's going to be overwhelming, but I don't think so. Like, I think it's the game sort of allows for you to try, like, maybe one league you want to focus on one thing, you can do that. Another league you want to focus on something else, you can do that. So maybe people should be, if they're feeling overwhelmed, just say, I want to focus on this, and then do that for this league, and then next league you can do something else. I think it's great. I think more content the better, man.
I think a huge change that's gonna be maybe Watchstones, because we have less zones now. Maybe they're gonna change Watchstones as well.
I suspect they're just gonna merge this stuff, because next week we're getting a big Atlas rework, right? So I don't think it'd be smart for them to really put all this time and work into the Atlas for this league. I wouldn't expect too much, basically.
Oh, it's the next one?
The
next 3.17?
The next one is like the Atlas expansion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they have to make it function, right, Tuna? So obviously, they do have to combine them at least.
So they're just gonna merge things, so there's gonna be new combinations that we are gonna have to figure out. So that's cool. But it's not gonna be like revolution of the mind, everything changes. That's next league, right?
Well, we don't know. I mean, I have no idea either. We just have to wait and see until they tease it or reveal it in the trailer on Friday or Thursday if you're American. Or EU. The other thing I wanted to mention here is uniques. So Chris Wilson went on record and said that the uniques are going to be good. Straight up.
So is Iron versus Wild. I had a conversation with the dev about that too. So if he says that and Chris says that, then we can expect some juice, hopefully.
Do you think? Okay,
uniques are so important.
What level of juice do you guys think? Are we talking Hate Forge? Like, I know that some people don't think it's that good, but are we talking Hate Forge? Or are we talking what's a mediocre unique? Like, I don't even know. Like,
something usable?
Yeah, something usable. Like what is it, like?
The daggers.
Lionized Glare.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
So like maybe like on the level of like
I would be happy if they add stuff on the level of like Void Forge or like the Void Fletcher, or like stuff like the Cyrus gloves, Cyrus helmet, the like stuff that is usable but it's not like insane and it's not bad.
The Cyrus gloves are pretty insane, good though, right?
Yeah,
those are like best slot for some builds.
Cyrus gloves are actually really good.
It's such a cool unique that like as a boss drop, it's like they managed to achieve sort of what the Watcher's Eye does.
Yeah.
In a way.
That's true. Yeah, and then we're also getting the revision of Awakened Gems back to some of their former glory at level 5. So, I mean, there's so much stuff. It's kind of what I was getting at earlier when I talked about elemental damage. Like, there's so many different moving parts. Like, just everything is changing all around everything. Like, you don't really understand how it's all going to interact at the end of the day. But
It's
I think
definitely more fun than last league where they just destroyed everything. They just nerfed. Like,
yeah.
Like, if they just change stuff around, I'm fine with it. But last league felt so stale because we just had the similar league before, and it was just better. But if they change stuff, this is actually the meta shift that we're talking about instead of the last league. I think this is going to happen this league instead.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you'll still see a whole lot of, Toxic Rain, Essence Drain, Contagion, because those builds' damage actually got buffed. Surprisingly. Well, we don't know. We need to see the patch notes, but yeah, I would expect that there's going to be a lot of more new things that you could try this league.
Yeah. To be fair, like league start wise, it's fine for those. Like, does anyone really truly care what's strong on league start?
No.
Like, people use league starters as a vessel to get to the good shit. And that's fine for those builds to be like. It's like, oh, I'll play Toxic Rain for like a week, so then I can play the more fun build, I suppose. I'm over Toxic Rain, so I'm not playing it, but you know what I mean. Like, it's fine for league starters to be like an avenue into something bigger.
Yeah.
He's talking about Toxic Rain like he's breaking up with it.
I'm breaking up with Toxic Rain, dude. I've been playing Toxic Rain straight for a year, and people still going like, "Yo, dude, you played Toxic Rain?" I'm like, hell no, dude.
I never even considered it.
It's so good though.
I know it's good.
It's so good.
It's too tanky for you, Elesshar. Don't feed yourself, dude.
Oh yeah, that's actually true.
Not enough damage. No, I think the real thing to highlight here is, as you mentioned, Tuna, we're getting all of this, and this is just tiding us over until Christmas, which is basically on the level of Ritual, that kind of level of an expansion. And they've promised big things for that too. They've said that Conquerors are going away, pretty much. Well, they might not be there, is exactly what they said. So, I mean, it's going to be a big 6 months for PoE. I think that's like the message here. And I think you probably don't want to miss it, honestly. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty big banger.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a good time to be a PoE lover, I guess.
It's probably gonna be a lot of confusion and figuring stuff out though as well, because nothing is like known necessarily. I mean, maybe we know some things, but there's a lot of unknowns. Yeah. I think that's everything from me for at least for what we have right now. Did we miss anything? I guess there's some div cards, but that's not super crazy.
Yeah.
Those div cards were nice, but not that.
I know they're created by people, but like div cards are shit. Like, I'm so over div cards. Like, we just added a new div card that gives the rings from the bosses. Like, what?
We could just farm the bosses.
Yeah, just let us farm the bosses. Like, what is this?
The only div cards which I really care about are div cards which drop somewhere, which you have a reason to like go after. Like Cemetery, Brother Stash, that's a good one. Like, it's actually relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, like some of them are like counter element, like the Delirium Orb one, it drops off the Conquerors. That is actually like a big deal. It makes farming the Conquerors way better.
That's cool.
But for the most part, most of them are just like random, just from like corrupted temple incursions or something like that. It's weird.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan of particularly like div cards sort of undermining farmable content, if that makes sense. Which like a lot of div cards do that.
Yeah. It's hard to target farm div cards as well, because you have to buy the maps one by one, like we said before. You can't just sustain the map that you wanna run indefinitely and just run that map if you wanna target farm it. It's so annoying to actually go for farming div cards.
Yeah. When I was playing like SSF, which I did for an entire league, sometimes you drop a div card, and like especially since you have access to so many stacked decks, and you never think to yourself that like, I can complete this set, because You'd be delusional if you did, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, let's say the Delirium Orb one, basically there's a new card which gives a Delirium Orb. If that is like as common as like, let's say the Survivalist from Underground Sea, and it's in a place like Underground Sea, that is then really impactful actually. But they have to do that, and they don't seem to be willing to do that lately. Put them in places where you can actually farm them.
Yeah.
Do you know what's worse than deep cards even? Stacked decks.
They said they're going to come back.
They're so bad. They just put it on every like league mechanic or everywhere just to give it value instead of actually like giving specific stuff to the league mechanic that would make it worth running.
It's like that meme where the guy slaps the thing.
Yeah.
Slap it stack deck on it.
Rewarding. Boom. Stack deck. Now it's rewarding.
But
what the fuck?
It seems like they kind of know that now. Like, because I mean, it does. It has the cryptocurrencies. We don't know how many or what they do yet, but hopefully they're good. Yeah, I think best case scenario for those is there's some super risky form of crafting, which is insanely rewarding and actually worth for you to do.
Paul.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's a pretty good place to wrap it up. You guys good there?
Yeah, I'm good.